Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Shinobi.
Oh, it's Shinobi's
Wait, is it
birthday?
actually?
No,
Really?
I lied.
Oh.
But congratulations, Shinobi, on winning the qualifier. Shout out
Okay.
Cloud9. I've just got my mug of tea here, filled with Cloud9's tea, official tea. And welcome to Plat VALORANT episode 17.
I really thought you'd done some kind of deep
When is
digging into
Shinobi's
Shinobi.
Yeah, I thought I missed like a company email. We were starting with little happy birthday.
Hold
like,
on.
whose birthday is it?
Shinobi Valorant.
He's 26.
June 23rd, man.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get him on episode, I don't know, whatever, 68.
Yeah,
Sure, wish him a
we'll
happy birthday
we'll wish
then.
him a happy birthday then.
I thought he was older. I really did
So
think
did
he was
I.
older. Because
He's actually
He's 26.
he's younger than me, man.
Yeah.
He's got a fierce beard going on.
The reason was I tuned into Swag's stream like during the first strike qualifiers, and he was watching old like CS 1.6 VODs, and Shinobi popped up in the kill feed, and I was like, holy shit, he's one of these like 33-year-old guys that like played CS 1.5 and learned all about those like DE like death or whatever the fuck, and I thought Shinobi was one of those guys, but he's actually younger than Josh.
Wasn't
Wow.
1.6 popular even after Source had come out in terms of
Oh, yeah.
in
Oh,
specific
yeah.
regions? Like
That's
it
like
was the main
2010.
game.
Until and CSGO was the
Yeah.
game changer. That was like the community split.
In the UK, it was pretty much a CS Source, I think.
Yeah. By the way, sorry,
For
Shinobi,
all
for calling you a
1.6 and
33-year-old.
Yeah, what a great start to the episode.
Nice way to celebrate him.
Really
well,
trying to make our way into the scene, be nice to everybody.
we're gonna talk
make
we're gonna talk
networking
directly to Shinobi actually.
really?
Well, at some point, I don't know when, but yeah.
Oh, was
Um,
that a little preview? Little
Whoa.
tease for
Hey,
the
could
people.
be happening pretty soon. I don't know. Maybe we'll get a little pro player on the episode. Who knows? Maybe we'll increase the production quality. We'll talk about the tournament though as well. The First Strike North American Open qualifiers later. But for now, the patch notes, because the patch notes got released last week, but we haven't actually got to play them yet. In fact, they're releasing today. When this episode's live, the patch should be out, right?
Yeah,
Is the
they
patch
released
already
it this
out?
morning.
Yes.
Yeah, so we finally got the patch notes last week. We didn't get to talk about them because we're dumbasses and we record on Mondays for some reason. Patch notes are every Tuesday morning, by the way. We didn't really think about that one, but there's some massive changes in this patch. Off the top of my head, there's the economy changes, the Sentinel nerfs, the breach buff, and Icebox I think is in competitive now.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to
Buffing
start at the
breach.
top? Because
I mean,
Yeah, let's start
we
from the top.
can we can start at the top, but
What is the top?
the top is just Sky joining.
oh
Okay.
right,
which
so
is-
yeah, Sky's in the game and Icebox is in rank now, and the main importance of that for our interests, I suppose, are that for the upcoming First Strike qualifiers, the second round of the First Strike NA qualifiers.
So
those are gonna
the
be
first,
in
the
game.
second open qualifier
yes,
in NA.
Sky will be in, but
specifically.
Icebox won't be. Icebox is only in for the final
for the main
tournament.
event. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sky will be a relevant factor, but
Which
Yeah.
makes which when we are talking about these teams later on that didn't make the next round of qualification in First Strike, either via upset or they're a tier 2 team or whatever, those teams will now have to be potentially dealing with people that instantly grasp the use of Sky and just spam her to win. Like that is a very viable thing that they might run into during these qualifiers. So it made this first qualifier incredibly important.
yeah. And
You,
some of the teams are going to have a longer chance to actually practice with Sky based on when they got eliminated. Some of the teams that are still in the next part of the
Was that like
closed
Immortals?
qualifier. Yeah, like Immortals, ANDBOX, etc. They'll actually be
Because they're not
practice
part of
with
the
it
closed,
earlier.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, beneficial to go out round of 32, I guess.
Also, they pushed this patch in the middle of the First Strike qualifiers, and I sent Kurt a video of some of the bugs that I encountered. But I will say, in regards to the Sky kind of debate as well, that they were saying in the previous patch notes when they released this patch that this was like a bit of a one-off. Like they really do not want to drop patches like in the middle of tournaments or in terms of Sky, drop out like a new agent in the middle of like a qualifier or a tournament, and here you can see some bugs that gets introduced
that's
when you
hilarious.
when you drop a new
So
patch without
this
the
patch was
UAT.
this patch was live for like 2 hours before it got pulled.
Yeah.
And they reverted it for the rest of the matches. This is absurd. I mean, the Sage.
God, that is nightmare.
Yeah.
Very funny though.
The trouble is, right, and man, game development is hard. To throw the developers a bone here.
Yeah.
If you have done your entire development cycle in a studio and then suddenly a pandemic hits and you've moved everything to your bedroom, there's a lot of tools and the processes that you go through to test stuff, fix stuff, implement patches that completely shifts and changes. The workflow goes. So I am willing to give as many doubts and benefits, whatever the hell the saying goes, to the developers for this one.
Also,
yeah,
go on.
I was just gonna say, I think that as much as people have been literally a lot of the comments online, I was reading them, they were like, "How the fuck can the devs get away with this? How can they think this is acceptable? Do they not have a Q&A team?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then actually, in hindsight, you look at the fucking situation we're all in. You dumb pricks. Like, look, there's a pandemic. Like, of course, it's gonna the game development's not easy, and then it gets much harder when you implement COVID. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Johnny?
No, so I was gonna say, like, I could never be like a game developer for this reason, like pushing patch notes, because if there's an error, like you're so anxious about it before you hit that button. So last year, for those who know, like I used to work in production, and I would put together this research packet, and I would send it to the entire company. So like all the admins, all the talent, all the producers, even like some of the like social media people, marketing, sponsorship, sales. Like I would sell this research packet weekly to everybody, and I compiled this list of like recipients that I would send it to weekly. And it was like probably like 100 people, maybe more, that I would send this research packet to. And it was a big document. It was like 50 pages every week of just updated information and all this stuff. And I would have such dire anxiety on Wednesdays because I'd be like, what if there's an error here? Do I have to send another email to over 100 people like, oh, sorry, guys, there was just slight error in this one. Actually, this guy is pretty garbage. The stat was wrong or whatever. Like, I can't imagine like pushing patch notes to like millions of players and just like not dreading potential errors just like this. Like, it's probably horrible.
And they reverted it really quick. So
They did,
Yeah.
Right in there.
Because they're cool.
Let's go through the rest of the changes. Next one, obviously, Sky is going to be in the game now, but only in unrated, presumably. Competitive 2 weeks later. They've buffed Breach's flashes.
Yeah, but they haven't just buffed Breach's flashes as well. People keep skipping over this portion of it, where if you go up, it says the flash tuning. The fade out of the flash debuff fades slower at the start. So basically, when you get flash, you're going to stay full flashed for longer, and then it'll have like a quicker fade away towards the end. So it's not just longer flashes, it's also longer flashes on everybody, and you're full flashed for longer. It's a significant buff.
Flashbangs are already pretty strong, in my opinion.
I mean, I've heard other people mention it, but I think it's a very fair point that there should be you should get flashed less if you 180 away from it. If you actually are able to turn away from it, the strength of the flash is still too significant. And I would agree with that. That is somewhere they could take it to naturally nerf the flashes sooner.
It's too much. When you see pro players actively playing in anti-flash spots by essentially crouching and looking into the corner, like they're on the naughty step, like that's too far, in my opinion. Of like that's if it's then not worthwhile to play the game properly, and instead you need to literally hide away from the prospect of playing in an anti-flash spot to cover for your teammate. I think they're too powerful. And a decision like this, they've said, is because Breach was not being picked much, didn't have a high win rate in ranked. But this is the nature of any character that requires, I said this in the last episode, it's the nature of any character that requires any sort of follow-up from your teammates. Coordination's always going to be lacking in ranked. So this is the tightrope that they're walking when they're coming to balancing for competitive play and ranked. And how they tackle this is, in some cases, it's not going to be life and death for the competitive scene and for pro play, but it is going to be quite impactful. And you're going to notice it over the course of tournaments.
I also want to point out that in our previous episode, we were theorizing that it would be stuff like him being able to follow up on his utility more by being able to put away his gear and get out his gun more quickly, something like that. And instead, it isn't. It is a change that's still designed for your teammates to capitalize on it, really, by broadening the window that they're flashed. But I don't think that's going to help. I don't think most of the time people are coming around the corner 0.25 seconds a little too late in gold and below and failing to capitalize on the breach flash. I think there's just no communication or teamwork in the first place.
They're not coming around the corner at all because they don't have their mic on, or they're playing without headphones. That's the only change I could see. The only change I could see that would genuinely work is something that comes to all the rest of your team where the flash happened, and if someone's flashed, like if I don't even know how you would do this without it being game breaking, but the reason that Sova works so well is because they light up on the map. I mean, they're bright red. The people that you should go and kill are bright red, but obviously you can't do that when someone's flashed through a wall. So I don't know really what you do there.
Yeah, I think they've gone about the wrong way of buffing breach for this purpose, because if the problem is that he has a low win rate because people aren't, I'm assuming it's because people can't coordinate with players when they're playing breach, or they just don't communicate, they don't talk, they don't whatever, they don't follow up on it.
Yeah,
you need to make then breach. You need to start to tailor him towards solo play, because this flash change must be because they see that breachers aren't getting value out of their own flashbangs, right? Like they're flashing in there, and because there is a wind up and a wind down when you're flashing, and then you're wide swinging, and by that point the flash is already starting to fade. So this,
I think, if I had to guess, I think the specific stat that they're probably looking at is when Phoenix plays, a lot of the time people are blinded and then die straight afterwards because they have the ability to track that kind of stuff, right? You see it in your little kind of summary at the end of your life. And then on Breach, they probably see there's a load of times where people are getting flashed, but then no one's killing them. So they're trying to make the flashes directly correlate to kills and therefore round wins.
A better way to do that is go ahead.
The problem here is there isn't a problem. Breach was fine. The buffs they did were fine. He didn't need to be changed any further. I actually think they had him in a good spot previous to this. I mean, it is a small buff, but kind of an annoying one to an extent. Nobody likes to be blind for an extra 0.25 seconds. I feel it's unnecessary. I think they actually put him in the perfect spot where he was very viable in pro play, still good in rank, but you need a bit of coordination. I think that's pretty much fine. I mean, I don't think you can really take him any further than that, lest you wander into the territory of overpowered, right? I mean, I think they honestly had him in the perfect spot, and they could have just left him there.
Yeah, I really liked Brent's point about encouraging solo play as well, because I think that Breach suffers from kind of like a Viper-esque kind of problem where players in Valorant just haven't grown accustomed to how Valorant should be played yet, and therefore agents that favor like solo play are just going to be better, because people in ranked haven't really learned how to capitalize on the team play aspect and utilizing utility like this. But like in a year, people will be way better about that stuff, because it's a trickle-down effect of pros discovering how the game should be played and that being integrated into ranked. And then you always get like the lower ranks. They will eventually learn how to take use of that utility, because like the skill of the player base will always improve like gradually. Now, we don't want to wait 2 years for people in silver to learn how to breach flash, but I still think that it's a good point though, that like agents like Viper and Breach, like, you sort of have to accept that they are in this position where they are very utility-based, and you can't just make that utility absurd because you want lower-tier players to be able to use it appropriately. I think they'll gradually see more play as people grow accustomed to it. But until we get there, I don't see a need to like buff these agents like out of control because they need playtime now. Like, just leave it, and then in some time, like, you'll see those agents get to play.
I love the idea of a patch note that just says, we're going to wait 2 years for silver players to learn how to breach flash. We were thinking of buffing him, but instead we're just going to allow the passage of time to do its thing.
Well, he's just gonna be absurd now. Everyone's gonna play him.
Yeah.
What's next on the list? The Sentinels nerfs. Okay, so they made a variety of changes to Cypher and to Killjoy, basically, where they won't be getting value anymore when they die. I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. I'm undecided. I need to see how it plays out, but I think the threat of, like, I don't know, part of the benefit of having one of like these players were their role already fit into the lurking play style as it was. And now to get maximum value out of them, they need to be the last alive no matter what. I mean, what is this, a Brax buff or? I don't know. It's
exactly.
Like,
it's like a buff for really safe Cypher players.
Yeah.
But, you know, the more I think about it, the more I don't think it matters too much. Not all of the maps. So most of the time, I don't know whether this is some correlation within map design, but on most of the maps where you would want to leave tripwires up, your Cypher doesn't really play that aggressive by default. Like the maps where you play really aggressive as Cypher, like Split, for example, where you're trying to actively work a ramp and like take a map control away. If you die doing that, you haven't really robbed your team of anything. It's not like you are leaving tripwires on a main. Sure. Like someone would still have to go and watch that if you did die, or they just weren't going to flank anyway, the defenders.
I've watched a round loss in competitive play, and in pro play, and I've lost a game in competitive from playing bind, the Cypher setting up trips in hookah window, them not getting cleared out the entire game, trying to execute onto A, players trading, the attackers go for a last minute TP switch and bait, and they try and run the clock down and try and get the plant down. They get caught in the trip, and they're just hanging there, and I have lost a match from that happening.
I remember seeing that in a pro game recently.
And it's happened recently in a pro game. So the tangible effects of this, I think we're not going to see. Like, essentially, we'd have to go back and watch old pro matches and look at how much impact they get out of the turret and out of the tripwires after those players die, because I think it is going to have a tangible effect.
I think it'll have a bit of an effect. Yeah, I mean, to me, like Bind is the map where you'll see this. Actually, maybe Haven, because Haven you often do put trips. You'll put like a trip over by C. Like a very common Cypher default is beginning of the round, trip C long, go over to A, try and work A with your cage, and see if you can get some territory insured. And you are then actively trying to monitor the C flank with your tripwire while playing aggressively for map control on the other side. And if you die in short, that does open up the flanks for being exploited. Mm-hmm. But on Bind, the Cypher isn't normally the first one going like deep into an area, unless you have one of these defaults where your Cypher's like solo work in showers. But to me, the top teams normally send utility into showers to take it anyway, so I don't think that'll be a massive issue. I just feel like it's a bit of a nerf to that Cypher playstyle on Haven where you work A while keeping the trips up on C.
Yeah. I like it actually, because I always found it pretty I don't know if boring is the right word, but it was boring to an extent that Cypher trips would sometimes just, I don't want to say accidentally, but it would just be hanging around and they'll shut down somebody on the defensive side, possibly going for an aggressive push, trying to go for a unique flank, try to catch people at the right timing, and then they just walk into a trip and it just shuts down a potential interesting play that they were going for. I think that it is good in that way, that it actually can open up players on defense to potentially playing more aggressive on the flanks and making plays that they otherwise wouldn't have, which is what makes the game interesting at the end of the day. Like, it's not interesting to watch a guy walk down C and then have to not do anything because there's a tripwire there, and if he breaks it, they're going to know where he is. Like, I think this actually makes the gameplay more interesting overall, so I like the change in that respect.
Yeah, I think they're trying to make the agents less versatile as well. Like, you can't have trap wires and spy camera and both be like an aggressor that can like walk down and get map control or whatever. I think maybe they're trying to make room for other agents as well. So it's like, hey, Cypher, you're supposed to be this like pretty slow, thoughtful kind of agent where you put down the trap wires and you play it slow and you scout and you utilize your equipment. But you can't also be this agent that just like push us forward, or it's like a body utilized for aggression. Like, we want you to pick other agents for that. So perhaps they're trying to narrow down like what agents you're supposed to pick depending on what playstyle you want to play, and that would also open up for more room for other agents. But it would also make like agent picks more purposeful in that regard.
I think this might also be a ranked change, because I'm curious how much success in ranked the double Sentinel compositions have had. The Cypher Killjoy comps, because they are pretty common. People do play them, and I do wonder if that's part of it as well, is balancing around that. I mean, but this is a change that honestly it's interesting. I don't know if it's welcomed, but it's an interesting one. It's maybe it is part of their vision for the game.
Sentinels. A lot of people main Sentinels, so they didn't like this from what I saw. I originally didn't like this patch as well, and then I realized that this is just an enormous buff for Killjoy, and I was like, poggers then, actually. So, this is not a nerf at all. I mean, this is literally just not even slightly a nerf. It is a massive buff.
Yeah.
I sent you, Kurt, I sent you a series of pictures from a Brazilian guy, I believe, who was going around the map with his turret to try and see how big 40 meters is. Now, if you maximize these images, the minimap is hidden behind Jonathan a little bit, but basically 40 meters is enormous. It's absolutely massive. Like, have a look at that. Have a look at some of these on the maps and see like the range that you can play in, because it's just absurd. You can put your utility here in ropes on split, and you can play anywhere on the A site. So you can still have an alarm bot watching mid, and you can be playing anywhere on A, and it'll still be active the entire time. You can be playing. You can have an alarm bot here in mid on Haven and play anywhere on A, and it'll still be fine. It's a massive difference, or rather, other way around. So yeah, the amount of range involved here is huge. So really all they've done is buff Killjoy's ability to pick up her stuff.
Is it 40 meters for all of her kit?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all of her kit. Yeah.
The turret buff is pretty cool. I'm excited to see what the Killjoy players are actually able to do with that. Like Mitch and Cryptics coming to mind, etc. What they're actually able to do with the turret now in terms of using it later in the round, picking it up and using it for post-plant scenarios where that play will head. Because that's kind of that's the most interesting part of Killjoy's kit to me, is the turret usage. And I think that's one of the aspects of it that we've seen become more and more developed as she's been played more, but I still don't think the potential of the turret has been maximized yet. So I wonder where it can even be taken to at this point, because I don't even think it was maximized with the old turret. But this is I think it's a cool change. Hopefully it's not too strong. I don't think it will be, but it definitely opens up the Killjoy to being a lot more dynamic.
Mm-hmm. I also, though, I mean, just for one more thing, if you scroll up a little bit to where it says Killjoy, I just take issue with the niche that they want her to be in. They start this entire paragraph by saying Killjoy is most effective when locking down a single site. And I mean, that's just not even true. It's not a statement of fact. It's a wishful statement. She is most effective at the pro level when you spread your utility around for information. She's like the premium information gatherer on defense. But this indicates that they want to eventually have her in a niche where you are just putting all your utility on one site. And that to me is like a super boring niche for Killjoy to have. So I kind of hope that she isn't just massacre anyone who comes onto this site kind of agent in the future. Yeah. I mean, that is just such a boring niche for her.
All right, what's next? Wait, the competitive updates. What's going on in this? Icebox coming into competitive. Mate, we are going to be
few
so
times.
ready for Icebox, though, by the way. The amount of
He
10-man
played so
pugs
many
we've played.
10-mans. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are going to be so ready. Hi,
I
Cat.
still feel like I don't have a good idea of where the angles are. That map is just angles galore.
Someone said it was the Valorant equivalent of Nuke, and I couldn't agree more. Like it sort of feels like it. Even just watching the map, it's just like the close angles and like it's so chaotic. And I mean, I guess you need a map like this if you're making like tactical FPS game.
That's very different.
What what the hell is out? What is this?
The economy
I don't know.
updates.
Oh,
are the next
right,
big
yeah.
thing.
Okay,
True.
yeah, the oh, okay. Well, all right. Yep. You. Okay. You guys can't see. He's just lying on my phone. What are you doing?
Aren't you allergic to cats, Bren?
Yes. Yeah. I am. The economy updates are potentially the biggest change in this patch, in a lot of senses. There's a lot of scenarios where now you have to kind of weigh up the risk reward of saving. I don't think it's ever worth doing.
She is fucking vibing right now.
What?
She is
Looks like a
just
seal.
Yeah. Just like flopped over, spread out.
yeah.
There's a lot of scenarios where you just don't want to save now on pistols. Ever, actually, I feel like. You never want to save on pistol rounds. You always want to die to somebody else. Because the hit of $1,000, or like, what is it, the minimum of 1,000 that you gain, somebody was working out the mathematics behind it. And it is essentially, as far as I'm aware, never worthwhile to save now on pistol rounds if you well, for whatever scenario, if you don't get the bomb down or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you can't even buy full armor on pistols, so I can see why that wouldn't be the case.
What, you
But,
mean
yeah.
half armor?
Yeah, I mean, would you want to save half armor? Probably not.
No. Yeah,
No.
I don't think so. Yeah, it's yeah. This is a change that I that's one of the immediate, like, okay, that's how that's gonna work out. But I can already see myself getting so fucking confused when I don't have enough money to buy something for the next round. Like just
People
off
will
of
get
this
used
change
to it,
alone.
though.
Yeah, I think it's just a playstyle thing. I'm not very good with the numbers when I see them. I need to play them. You know.
Yeah.
Anybody else with me?
Yeah,
It's
well,
weird
I mean, they
that
do
in
show
CS
you how much money you're going to have for the next rounds in this game, so you don't really have to be good with numbers, which is the nice thing. But
yeah,
I mean, this change just sets in the fear, like whenever you play ranked now, because you know that you'll get less credits if you survive the round. Because in CS, it's the same thing where like you're trying to save a gun, and you're like, okay, well, if I survive the round and I don't get any money the next round, and I lose my gun, then I'm actually just screwed. And I think that kind of fear will now also set in if you play ranked. So I think the mental kind of aspect to this as well will really set in, Brent. So I don't think you have to worry about forgetting about it. I think you'll fear for your life. I think you'll be dreadful of anxiety because you realize you only get 1,000 credits. So I think this is a pretty big change in that.
It makes hunting people really viable after
Way
you've
more
already
fun.
planted. And yeah, quite tense and fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird though that they went in this direction with the economy, because I don't feel like anyone was saving. Like,
allergies
just left
hitting.
you. In all of the games that I've watched and played, people very rarely save, even when it was really good to do so. So now it's not. I mean, people are just going to be going for everything.
yeah, cool. What's the next patch note?
No. Oh my god, Brent's dead. This is like
Yeah,
my
right.
relationship with like spicy burritos. It's like, well, feel like shit afterwards, but there's a burrito here. I might as well pet it or like
Quality of life.
eat it.
Pet the burrito.
But yeah, I really feel your energy, Bren. It's
What
very
is
relatable
the
right
quality of life change here?
They added
Left
left-handed
hand.
view models.
Oh yes,
And then they've actually made some big observer changes that are listed right below as well, where the team colors are now staying for the entirety of the game. So they don't swap at the half. If you launch and you're on the red team, you are red for the whole map. And the other team is always, by the way, they say
I
green.
know why this is, by
What
the way.
the fuck is red and green? It's not a green, it's teal. It's like,
I mean,
it's more blue than it is green.
It's green. It's more green than it is blue.
It's fucking blue.
Depends on your color correction on your monitor.
Yeah, I think it's a little more green than blue.
This is like that robot sound when it's like, is it ba ba ba, or is it this other thing, da da da? And it's like depending on what you listen to, like you hear different things. It's like depending on what color you think it is, you see different colors.
But also,
I actually know why this is. I know why they've implemented this.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay, it is because when they boot up, oh my,
it's teal. I told you it was teal.
I mean, that's blue.
It's definitely wait.
The only other time I've heard teal.
It ain't green.
The only other time I've heard teal is like Age
get
of Empires,
assaulted
where
by-
like you
Yeah, I
select teal
do.
as your color.
Can we get up the hex code for our Plat chat logo,
Wow, you're really asking Kurt for a lot here.
and then maybe search it up?
Okay, so the reason is, okay, when they come out with the official like Riot Worlds Valorant, blah, 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 it's you can select custom colors for your team and stick with it through the entire round. So okay, it's not about as much as it's about the red and teal. It's about when a team is like navy blue or gold or whatever, and they stick with that color the entire round because you have your official team color. So that's why I've seen it.
Yeah, seen it in the tea leaves.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people actually really disliking
coffee
this
beans.
change of having consistent colors.
Disliking.
Yes, disliking. The overwhelming majority of people the overwhelming majority of people disliking this this change because they just don't. I don't think they haven't seen it in action. They just think this is going to be so confusing. Attackers are always red, and now they're not going to be. And they're just like losing their little peanut minds. They can't comprehend that attackers will not be red. But I think when they see it in play, in practice, it does work well. So
Yeah. All they have to do is just give it a while for the brains to adjust, and it'll actually be easier. There were so many times where the scoreboard would not match the UI at the top, that would not match the players themselves. Like,
very
get it together.
confusing. Very confusing. Is that all the changes that we've got in patch 1.11?
They fixed some of this hitching.
Really?
Some of it, yeah.
Da Vinci? No way. They fixed some of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. They said they've got a fix for one of the most common ones, but they're still trying to track down a couple of others.
Also, are they writing Jett now can't rope dash? Lel. Is that like a different kind of lol? They didn't want to write LOL in the patch notes, but they were like lel. Like a nicer version of lel.
Lel.
It's like writing kick. Instead of writing LOL, you write kick, like in World of Warcraft days. You write
Kek is
lel.
I've seen you using Kek unironically recently,
I
Johnny.
played so much
It's
WoW,
such a
dude.
boomer way to type lol.
It's still the wave in WoW, dude. It's 15 years to this day. But lel, writing lel, like lel, she can't.
I
rope
like
dash,
lel.
Yeah.
I think it's so fucking funny.
All right.
Well, there's no word. That's lel. It's literally just a different LOL.
What does that say?
What does it say? I can't see it.
When you're too
Dude,
dang.
Valorant is dank.
Dang.
Thank you.
Lol.
Oh,
Okay.
God.
Well,
Thank you, comms associate Jeff Landa.
if anybody
for writing this down.
unsubscribes after this episode, I won't hold it against you.
Dude. Did a bit too much catnip this morning.
Yeah, what
She's
the hell
on
is wrong
shit.
with you? Look at you.
She keeps
Bro, she is-
she keeps biting your hand,
And he keeps going back for more.
I mean, you are obviously going to get mauled, you dumbass.
Squish. Okay, let's talk
hell,
about
what's the next
Cloud9.
topic, my
Cloud9, huh? Yeah, I'm fucking losing it, dude. Maybe I'm the one who's getting high off the fucking cat dandruff. I gotta take an antihistamine. Talk about Cloud9 winning.
Okay. Oh yeah, Cloud9 won. How about that? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
they didn't. Well, they won the seeding open qualifier bracket to get the first seed in the closed qualifier.
Yeah,
so they
probably should
didn't
have been
win
more specific
anything
than that,
yet,
shouldn't they?
but they came in first of the open.
They won the
qualifier.
tournament for seeding.
Yeah, which was still impressive. I was impressed by the team overall. I was actually impressed at many points by all 5 players. I was impressed by Shinobi's calling. I was impressed by their compositions, how much value they were able to get out of the utility of the comps that they were using. And I was impressed by how far they've come if I hearken back to a time months ago, Mitch on the Sage, Vice Cypher, Relics just not really fitting into any role, just playing kind of whatever they needed, and it never really looked that great. Compared to what we're seeing now, I'm really impressed. It's a genuine massive improvement on all accounts from the team. Every aspect of their gameplay has improved. It's really excellent to see.
It's weird because it's a team that has improved over time and developed
You
appropriately.
remember when we were saying we should write this team off and blow them up?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's what it felt like for a long time. I mean, and I don't know. You can't. I mean, I don't think you can blame anyone for having that opinion at the time, because there was. No. I mean, pretty much over the entirety of the Ignition series, up until the very end in Pop Flash, and FaZe were. Or no, it wasn't even FaZe. It was just Pop Flash. When they started just throwing shit at the wall, they started switching up the comps and trying a bunch of new things with the Mitch on Jett, etc. Tens on Reyna. I mean, up until that point, they were running the same comps. They looked super stale. It was just Tens dragging along these anchors attached to his ankles. And it was working because he was just, at that point, so far and away better than everybody else in NA. I mean, his Jett play style has influenced the style that people are playing Jett now to an extreme amount in NA. Yeah. I mean, the way he was entering on bomb sites throughout the entirety of the Ignition series was something only he was doing, and now it is commonplace for Jetts. And he was just hard carrying at that point. But yeah, I mean, they've really evolved. It's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shinobi's become much better with his fragging as well. Mm-hmm. Relics has found his place on the team when it comes to the arrays that he's basically just specialized in. And what I found most interesting, honestly, I mean, maybe not most interesting, because there was a lot of cool stuff that Cloud9 showed us, but something big picture interesting was the lack of Sova that they played, because almost everybody else everywhere in the world is playing Sova as just a full-time, every map other than Split, we throw Sova in. And Cloud9 were only playing him on Bind. They had Vice on Breach all the rest of the time, and they were running Breach double duelist just everywhere, which I did not think was going to be the wave moving forward. So I thought it was going to be much more to do with the Breach and the Sova kind of combining together. But they still found quite a tactical style without the information gathering of the Sova. And that to me is extremely interesting. Shows a very viable, different style for how Valorant can be played right now as well.
But haven't you been saying that like Breach is probably like supposed to be a mainstay in some of these compositions because it's played more in Europe and stuff, right? So
yeah, but I thought
it was just a matter of time before NA started playing more Breach as well.
Well, but the thing is, even in this tournament, even in First Strike North America, Breach was sat at, I think it was 36% play rate, which is
across all teams.
Yeah, across all teams, which is not high. I mean, that's not particularly high. And Sova in comparison was sat at 78%. So this is like, you know, Sova is still far and away the more popular option for teams. Now, they don't fulfill the same role, but they fulfill the same kind of player tends to play them, at least within North America, when they don't run many comps with both of them in at the same time. So I thought that teams would be trying to put an additional player on one of those agents and run Sova and Breach. And instead, a lot of teams just opted to run the Sova, and then, you know, that's it. Look at the play rates on everything other than Split. It's in the low 90s for Sova. I mean, he's just like a must pick across the board. But Breach is not in the same conversation. Whereas Cloud9 essentially took that and just flipped it on its head, where, okay, they're still not running it on Split where no one does for the Sova, but the only map where they're running it is Bind. And then the rest of the time, Vice plays the Breach. And they were just getting a lot of value out of the Breach play.
Vice is playing it really well. I mean, he looks his best on Breach, I think. I mean, what's really impressive about Cloud9 to me is just how much value in utility they get out of Mitch's Killjoy and Vice's Breach. Like, if you think about how they were playing the Split defense, which was just lockdown against every team, it was so powerful. The value they were getting out of their utility was crazy. And then you have Shinobi as well. You can genuinely see when you watch Shinobi now, his aim is actually just better. The way he is moving his mouse across the screen is smoother. It's more controlled. He has better crosshair placement. He's just genuinely gotten better at aiming. I don't know if maybe he's just been grinding away at DM, but his aim is just genuinely better.
Did he say in your chat, Josh, he's just got more confidence?
Yeah, he basically said there was no new aim thing.
God,
he was
this
just
is
more
nasty.
confident. I think probably one of the tasks that, I mean, we'll probably have Shinobi on at some point so he can talk to it a bit more. But in my head, what makes you more confident aiming as an IGL is that you know your team has got their shit together.
Yeah.
You know, where you don't have to micro your players as much and you don't have to keep comming like the plan and have that at the forefront of your brain all the time.
Yeah.
You can just put a bit more focus onto the game. And it seems like Cloud9 have done a lot of prep, not specifically for this tournament, but just like general prep work. They know how they want to be taking certain areas of the map. They know their style. Their defensive play throughout the entirety of this tournament was spectacular on all maps other than Haven. They just had so many set different defensive holds based on Mitch's Killjoy and where they wanted to position that. And it was just so fluid. And so I think Shinobi's just had that pressure relief from him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And you could see that on Ascent, I think was one of the best maps for that, where you saw C9 have so many different looks on their defense with Mitch rotating the turret around on that Killjoy and just showing a bunch of different looks. Because if you think back to like Pop Flash, like one of the biggest complaints about Cloud9, and we saw some of the other teams in the qualifiers have this, they just had like one default. And they just played the one default and then tried to unlock something, trying to find something, and then rotate based on that. C9 now are in a position where they have a few different looks that they feel really comfortable with, and just expanding their playbook like this has really helped them elevate themselves to the next game. And I also think that you mentioned earlier that the players are more comfortable in their roles, and I think that really helps in like rotations and stuff, because we saw Shinobi call some wacky rotations in Pop Flash as well around the map. Sometimes, they'd get to a bomb site, but they wouldn't make it in time, and we just laugh our asses off in like Discord or wherever, because it's, the big old Shinobi, you rotate around and you run out of time. But having players on agents where they feel comfortable with the utility within those rotations. So like, okay, well, we're going to rotate A, and on the fly, no thinking, you pop like some breach flashes like on the way there, and everyone just feels comfortable the way they use their utility in those rotations. Like that's genuinely huge as well to make a team like this work. So not being able to you don't have to script everything, but having the players in a position where they can just kind of use their utility on the fly in very rotation big kind of rounds, I think that's really helped this team combined with a deeper playbook.
Yeah, I mean, I even like those late hit site plays from Ascent on their attack from Shinobi, because I think those work really well. They're very good at being able to take map control aggressively at the beginning of the round, leave a guy in a position, go away from that guy, and then be able to return to him because they've still maintained that map control. So it lets them play this really heavy map rotation kind of attacking rounds where they push and pull the defenders, and they are still very flexible once it gets to the end because they've taken and retained the map control. And you just saw a clip there from Tens as well. I mean, just another tournament from Tens where he's the best performing player in the entire tournament. 307 average combat score, just shitting on everyone.
Yeah, Tens had an unreal tournament. I think this must have been Tens' best tournament out of the last few. It had to have been. I mean, he was popping off. But yeah, it is really cool, like what you were talking about, Johnny, with the compositional changes. It is so cool to see this team actually improve with the same 5 players. But yeah, so much of it being based on just intelligent role switching. I mean, I just can't even imagine them going back to what they had to before, the roles they had before. It's just a completely different team, and it is genuinely unexpected. Yeah, I mean, I really didn't expect this roster to be able to pull off results like this or look like how they look now. I mean, it really did not seem likely if we go back in time.
It's
I mean,
rare in esports.
It is.
Like, you don't see the same 5 make these drastic improvements, because you got to think about the Valorant ecosystem as well. Every team is making improvements. The bar is constantly being raised by other teams, and the level of what you need to play at to be at the top is constantly being set to new heights. So like if a team, go ahead, Josh. Yeah.
No, go on.
I was going to say if a team has already kind of not met those expectations early on, and they haven't really made too many changes. I think they picked up. Did they pick up any coaches? I know Chu is like
Chu, right?
Yeah, but Chu is like.
Well, they also picked up James for IRL or something like that. I can't exactly remember his name, but he's the analyst, right?
Yes.
So not much has really changed in the structure of the team, arguably, and they haven't changed the players around, but they've changed the roles around. And the improvements have come seemingly internally, which doesn't actually happen that often.
No.
When you players get stuck in a mindset when they're playing with the existing 5, and it's whether it's mental or not, I'm not sure. But they get stuck and set at the level they play that they've played at, this entire time. So it's really impressive. Now there's also the argument that, well, were the other teams really playing up to par because of the first strike qualifiers? Because you're only playing for closed qualifier seeding. So there's the argument that we didn't even see other teams play at their maximum potential. But I still think, outside of all of that, Cloud9 played really, really well. And I think you were already talking about it when I was running upstairs, but Mitch was a standout for me, actually. Mm-hmm. Just in general, this is the tournament where I was watching his Killjoy and genuinely was very impressed in every game that I watched of how he was using the Killjoy.
He's currently at the forefront of Killjoy usage in North America. And when Killjoy gets a buff and playtime goes up, other kind of Cypher Sentinel players are going to be playing catch up, I think, to Mitch. Because he's already got the system in his head of the like super basic way to play, and then the more advanced way where he's using his turret very creatively, and he's just going to continue to build on that. I think it's such a good role for him.
I made this point when we were doing the companion stream this week for First Strike on your channel, Josh. But I think it's really cool how Mitch has become good at Killjoy, because he did it in reverse. Every other Killjoy has started fairly static, and then you see them kind of experiment forward. He was like off the wall experimenting on Killjoy, just crazy alts, doing a totally unique player. He was experimenting constantly in the tournaments, and he's like done the level up of his Killjoy in reverse, where he was going wild with it and then just picked away at the things that were too experimental, to the point where now he's just this unique player, but he's also just fundamentally really good at the agent.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Envy made it into another finals, didn't they?
Yeah,
they did.
Who would have seen that coming? I certainly didn't. I got 7 out of my 8 predictions wrong from the quarterfinals onwards. Envy making another finals here. This was quite surprising to me, actually. Out of all the teams, if you had told me that Envy were making it into the finals, I wouldn't have believed you, because arguably there's a lot of teams in this tournament that I thought were going to be stronger, and we can touch on that a little bit later. But a fantastic showing, I think, from Envy to make it to this point as well.
The upset win over Gen.G is pretty huge for them, I think.
Yeah. But I was surprised to see like how people like Haste were like riling up Envy. Not riling up, that's the wrong word. But they were like, oh yeah, Envy, they're the real best team in NA, and like the Thanos like snap hand or whatever, the gauntlet with like FNS and everything. Like they seemed really hype on Envy. Like, oh, this wasn't like, a single tournament where they got second place or whatever. Like Envy are consistently supposed to be good now. That's what the vibe I'm getting, that we should consider Envy genuinely a really good team that aren't just getting, standoff one alone. I can't talk, it's too early. But they're just not like we should consider them like consistently a top team rather than a team that got like an easy bracket, or they won this match because of this one reason or whatever. Like genuinely, Envy might be really good in the North American region.
I mean, they look good. They do look fundamentally pretty sound, and I actually like the additions. I mean, this was the first time we saw them playing with Food and Crashies. And we had a lot of questions about like what roles would they be on, etc., etc. And they found an extremely weird way of integrating these two players. I mean, it is just weird. Crashies is taken over the Cypher, sorry, not the Cypher role, the Sova and Breach role, which makes some sense, right? You've got him on a bit more of a fragging role, and FNS continues to lurk and did really well, and he's the IGL. That all makes sense. But it's the food integration that is the most odd, because while they said he was going to be the Omen player originally, it seems like there are some maps where they don't want to play the Jett, and therefore Food takes over the duelist role, playing Phoenix, and then Mame comes in and plays Omen. And so you're leaning on the flexibility of Mame to the flexibility of Mame to be able to pick up role-playing agents rather than other duelists. And so you're swapping around the roles within your team. It is incredibly strange, but the more I watched it, the more I felt like they kind of had it figured out to a pretty decent level.
I look, it works. Sorry, Wyatt. It works, but long term, I wouldn't bet that this is the way. Come on, there has to be a simpler, better way. Consistent.
I think the simpler, better way is just keep Food on Omen. I actually think his best games. It's not even an I think. I believe statistically his best games were his Omen games. I mean, his bind raise play was not particularly great. It was fine. I mean, he did fine on the duelist, but I actually think his Omen looked like his best agent in this game specifically. This split game against Gen.G, he was playing incredibly well, and not just based on aim and mechanics, which is sort of what he was known for before, but he looked to be unlocking different parts of his brain when he was playing Omen on Split. He was actually playing incredibly intelligently. And I think that while Mummy it's impressive that Mummy is able to play a bunch of different roles, and he's experimented with plenty of different roles on the team before, but it is pretty evident that Jett is his best agent, and he is a really good Jett, period. And I also really liked when he was on Jett, the entrying that we were seeing from him. His rifling was really good. I mean, he was pretty much primarily opping on Jett before, but I loved his Jett rifle entry, and I think that they weren't fully utilizing him on some of the other maps. I would have liked to have seen Mummy playing Jett on Bind with Caboose as the other duelist on Phoenix, or Raze. I think that's fine. I think that Mummy had a couple good games on Omen as well, notably that one Ascent game against Gen.G where he hit the Collat op and was just saving his team with crazy fragging. But he could have pulled that same thing off on Jett. It was nothing specific to his Omen play, whereas I actually think Food was getting really solid value out of some of the Omen utility and the maps that we were seeing him play Omen. I'd like to just see them stick with that. I think it's the easiest fix. It's going to get both players more consistent practice on those agents. I think that is just an easy switch to me that makes sense.
Here's my opinion with this, with what's going on with this, because you're talking particularly about the roles of Envy and switching that around and trying to find something that works. I mean, I would argue that them making the finals implies that whatever they found does work, and you only need it to work now for another week, because after that, Sky's going to be introduced. There's probably going to be more balance changes in between from now until December the 3rd. If I was a betting man, I'd bet on even more balance changes to shake up what compositions are being played. But this is a good sign for me, because I was in the minority where I thought that Food and Crashes coming into this team was not going to be a good pickup. For whatever reason, I wasn't hot on Food and Crashes when they were on T1. I thought that they were a problem with the team, or at least if you were to point out individuals as problems, I was heavily leaning towards those two individuals. I will happily eat my words now. I mean, it's pretty evident that the problems of T1 were not stemming from these two individuals whatsoever, but they found success with a composition. And yeah, some of the players aren't on their most optimal roles, you can argue, but I think that's okay, because you've only got the closed qualifiers, which is happening November the 4th.
Yes.
So 3 days from 2 days from now. 2 days. It's the 2nd of November. So, not a lot. Stuff can change, but not a lot can change within a week. And if you were already a top team playing this kind of style, it's okay, I think, to ride this one out to try and get top 4 in this qualifier. You know what I mean?
Agree.
And then maybe try and settle on some roles once the meta once again is up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, there were I was just gonna say there are a lot of positives to glean from Envy.
Yeah.
Overall, they were playing incredibly well, and even previous to this tournament, they had been improving tournament by tournament, where they ended up in the finals last time, finals again now. It looks like they've been improving consistently, and I think that Crashy's looked really good. I liked him on the Sova a lot.
Yeah, he did.
He was playing incredibly well, and going in with you had low expectations of them. For me, my thing was I didn't necessarily think that getting Crashies and food was an upgrade nor a downgrade. It's fairly even to what they had before, I think. And I think they integrated Crashies really well, and I think Food's playstyle works in this team infinitely more than it did in
It
T1.
really does.
I mean, that's for damn sure. But overall, their team play is really good. I mean, I think the team has just been improving no matter what. I think this team would have continued to improve. It looks like that was going to be their trajectory anyway. Their attack sides are so clean now. Their mid-round play is really great. They're great at exposing. I'm thinking about on their ascent play, their mid-round decisions when they split into B, the mid control they get. It's all so smooth. It's fast. It's excellent gameplay. I just think that they could get even more out of this team, genuinely. I mean, and they do look really good. They do look like a top team. I don't think Hayes and other people, when they were talking about how good they are now, they're definitely not blowing smoke. They are really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on, Josh.
I just wanted to say as well that I like the way that they play aggressively on the defense in order to acquire information. It's a little more of like a European style, I think. You know, not all of the European teams play like that, but just being confident enough to push and be confident in your ability to take duels if you do happen to meet a person, and be confident enough that you've got the correct information to know when to push. I think that just gives you so much control over the map and so much extra info that you can use to work with on D that not a lot of other teams do. But if you think about their ascent, where they have Food pushing out of B main on Duelist pretty effectively, and then they have Caboose and Crashies working A main, pushing out there, constantly forcing the attacking team to retake those positions if they want to get back in. I think it's a really good way of playing that map, and a bunch of other maps as well.
Do you? Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that when Sky comes in, it is possible that you'll see Mame just kind of take that role, because they've got essentially three duelists, right? They've got Mame, Food, and Caboose. And of the three of them, it has been Mame who's shown the most
aptitude,
desire or willingness, aptitude to move to roles that aren't fragging duelist roles. So, you know, as much as Mame looks awesome on the Jett when he plays it, the guy's flexibility may be a higher priority for this team than his Jett, just because the composition might be worth more than his individuals.
I remember the exact game that I was watching of the first show qualifiers where I kind of came to the realization that, okay, this team is not just, they're not just playing like with a flowchart in their minds of how to play the game every single round. And it was, arguably, there's probably better matches to glean this from, but it was when they played against T1 on Split. And do you remember when T1 were just playing some of the worst Valorant we've seen in years? When they just were playing the same defaults every time, the same passive play, where they were not getting any sort of map control, any sort of information, not really making any sort of plays until the final 10 seconds of the round. The only way Envy lost that was if they were pushing into them, trying to take aggressive map control. And it's not the most amazing adaptation or not the most amazing read in the world, just kind of learning, we shouldn't be doing this game, right? But it is... I think there's a lot of teams that probably go into matches with game plans. They start losing and like, why the fuck are we losing? This always works, you know? Like our game plan that we go into always works. But they recognized the weaknesses of T1. They recognized how they could beat them pretty easily, and it was just not pushing on attack or on defense like they usually did.
Yeah, that's how they lost. Yeah, that is how they lost the previous map on Bind, Envy to T1, just pushing and feeding the kills to T1's default.
Yeah, and that was actually the reason. Why I predicted Envy, because we haven't talked about him enough, but FNS was incredible this tournament as well, and like the reads and the rotations and all of that. The reason I predicted Envy against T1 was because FNS is gonna tell his team, hey, I have a great read on T1, I'm a smart player, just don't push. And it just so happened that they started pushing in, you know, the national maps or whatever, but then calmed it down on Split. But I think, I said this in the First Strike preview with Josh as well, that I think when you look at Envy, I don't think that they're going to be one of those big oscillating teams that like one tournament they're really good and one tournament they're really bad or whatever. Because I think they have the stability within this team. I think they have the smarts with FNS. Sure, they have like 3 duelists. They're like figuring out their roles and like how they want to play the game. But they have genuinely very smart players on this team. And I think that consistently will help them build towards the top to maintain their position within the power rankings, etc. Because I think that this is a really smart team, and I think they'll be able to outsmart a lot of their opponents. So yeah, I don't think we talk enough about FNS and how great he was on the Cypher. Obviously, we had the questions like, is Crashies going to pick up the Cypher this tournament and then have FNS move over to Sova and maybe shot call on that role? But instead, FNS continued to frag on the Cypher, great lurks, great timings. Like, so many times FNS just got like a 2k from like a lurk or like knowing where their opponents were going to rotate. And then as well as Wyatt mentioned Crashies. I don't think Crashies was like spectacular, but he showed some really good maps. I think he fell short a bit in the finals against C9, but versus like Gen.G and stuff, like he was pretty decent. But I think it's promising. I think it's really promising to, if you can have Crashies like step up his fragging potential a bit in that Sova role, and then have FNS continue to do his things on the Cypher, because FNS, he's becoming like one of the best Cyphers in NA. So this is very promising for this roster.
That is a good point. He did play very well. I mean, I fully expect this Envy team to be a pretty consistent, maybe top 4. Like they're going to make at least the semifinals really consistently. That's kind of where I place them at the moment.
Yeah.
At least
also, I think it bears saying that their fragging was really good this tournament as well, just kind of across the board. You already know that Caboose can deliver in these big games. We saw that over in Pop Flash, but Food was having great games as well. Whether especially when he's more comfortable on the duelist, he just kind of runs forward, and he had other people supporting him this time. And then Mame was popping in some of these games. They won the game over Gen.G when a lot of us were predicting Gen.G to win that match. And Mame goes 44-18 in that match. I mean, that is just bonkers. And the way that this played out, especially when it came to Ascent, was people just winning their duels. Just actually just popping off individually. They made all the right plays as well, but so did Gen.G. And what it came down to a lot of the time on Ascent was Envy were just out-fragging them massively. And that's not something that you would usually say, especially when you consider that Gen.G have been upgraded and they have GMD and Sean on this roster now, both of who are, really good fraggers. But you look at GMD's stats in this game, and he was getting bodied by the Envy guys. It's quite a... it's not something I've ever really thought about Envy before, that they have a huge amount of firepower on their team. But with the addition of Food and Crashies, they really do.
Yeah, I mean, every player on that team is really mechanically skilled right now. It is just a really solid roster all around. Yeah, God, that Ascent game, though. Mummy was just a menace on A Heaven. Yeah. He actually was just ruining Gen.G's A pushes. That was a great game, though. If anybody missed that is definitely one to go back and watch.
Yeah, we can talk about Gen.G, though. What got them there? Their win over Sentinels. That was the drama of the tournament, wasn't it?
It was,
the accusations of people drinking, White Claws flowing, 360s.
It's not really is it an accusation if it's your own teammate dobbing you in?
No, I think Sinatra was taking the piss, though, when he made that tweet.
Yeah,
I think it was literally like a case of them not. I think it was the thing that Dapper doing 360 strikes me as it feels like such a schoolyard thing. Like I'm not trying. Like if we lose, it's okay because I'm not trying. You know what I mean? Like it feels so insecure.
It was also I don't think I've really seen people mention this when they're talking about it, but in that clip, I'm pretty sure isn't he in like a 2v4 and it's. Like
it's lost.
Rounds. It's like an already lost round as well.
The point is, it's already lost, but there's better. You can take it more seriously. You know what I mean? It's the action of him. He's very blatantly wanting everybody to know just how little he cares about that match. Yeah. That I looked at that and I was like, bro, I remember doing that when I was 14 in the fucking playground. Like It's just childish. It's just actually childish.
Doing 360s in the playground.
Bro, doing 360s in the playground, bro. But you know what I mean? Just like, it's...
Drinking White Claws in the playground.
It's like actively having to show people how much you don't care. And it's just a thing to make up how insecure you are. Like that you're I don't know, that you're throwing a game. You don't want to be judged. You don't want people to think that you're the bad team. This was such a weird.
The Sentinels are also a team full of personalities that do just like to. If they weren't taking it seriously, they would just be kind of literally goofing around. I think there's also a world here in which Dapper's not doing 360s because he wants to have it pop up on the screen. They just genuinely came into the match and they're just giggling.
That's fucking cringe, mate. Just stop doing it.
That's not cringe if they're just having fun, enjoying themselves.
Well, the problem is
they believe doesn't matter.
If they were just having fun, don't tweet about it later.
Don't complain about it later.
If you're just having fun, if you're just no, really, piece of advice. If you're going to go into a match and just have fun, and that should be the reward. You and your teammates having fun. You shouldn't need to then post about it later when you see the tweets calling you bad for losing. You don't have to post that you were just having fun. Just relish in the fun you had, because then you're actually causing problems for yourself. Genuine piece of advice. Yeah. I mean,
there's ways to have fun without doing 360s in the middle of rounds. You know, like if you just want to play like a standard Valorant, you don't want to show any strategies, you know, like it's just a qualifier, right? And we made a top 8. We don't want to show off everything we have in store. Just like, you know, play like it's ranked, you know, like have some fun with it and just mess around like that. But like 360s is like one step too far. It's like, come on, okay? Is that the level we're like stooping to? Like, okay, you know.
So takeaways from this. Josh, sorry, did you want to have your piece?
I wanted to say, some people are convinced they genuinely threw this game.
I mean,
had people. We were doing a companion stream, and I saw people saying that it was a big brain move. Genuinely, multiple people. This wasn't just some crackpot theory. The multiple people saying that Sentinels threw the game so that other teams wouldn't want to win because then they get matched up against them, and stuff like they don't want to show any strats, but they want lower seeding for some reason. There's no reason that they would want lower seeding here, and I don't believe that they genuinely threw the game. I can buy that they weren't trying at 100%. Yeah. Maybe it was like a 60% game, but once you get in the server, you're still playing the rounds to win. You're not deliberately missing your shots to throw and doing stupid shit to deliberately.
At the end of the day, it's still Sentinels. Every player on the team is really good. They're not they're not intentionally missing. I mean, they're still in the server trying to get kills, trying to win rounds. Did they go into it playing at 110% because it's a crucial match? No. Were they probably playing at like 80%? Yeah. And they lost. And if they were just having fun, cool, that's fine, but then also, don't tweet about it later when people make fun of you for fucking losing. That's the problem.
I think we can all agree that like not showing your playbook here was the right move.
Yeah,
it's like
fine.
You would save that for the actual main event where like
the most
it matters
competitive
or whatever.
way
You
to
made
play.
It.
Yeah.
Don't show everything you got like that. You know,
I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
You know what you do? You know what you do? You play this game for fun, and then you lose. Okay, that's okay, because you know you were just playing for fun, and then you go win the actual thing, and everybody will forget that this even happened, that you even lost this game. It will be totally irrelevant.
No, I'm going to tweet about it. People think I'm bad.
But also, this does mean that we're going to get a Sentinels Gen.G rematch in all likelihood for the closed qualifier. I think that's the way that the seeding works.
Yeah, it is pretty amusing. But yeah, if you're going to go into
rematch.
If you're going to go into a game knowing that you're going to have fun, you should ask yourself before the game, okay, if I lose this game that we're not going to try in, am I going to be upset later? Genuinely, ask yourself that before you do it. If you lose, will you be upset later? Because I've been there before, and I'm sure, Johnny, you have before. I'm sure you have as well, Josh. And Brett, anyone who's played competitive games, at some point, you've played an unimportant match in a tournament that you haven't really tried in, and then you lose it, and then you're still mad later. So
that's how I feel in ranked. It's like when I play with Sideshow, I have to disassociate from my competitive brain and just tap into fucking Legoland and just like, oh, you know, we're here with the boys, you know, playing some Overwatch. It's like I have to tap into that part of my brain.
I get fucking livid playing in Platinum with you, Josh. Like you just. Kurt, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if any potential sponsors are listening, this is a segment you could buy. It's called Wyatt's Weekly Therapy Session.
Dr. Valorant.
Dr. Valorant.
Oh, listen, I'm giving out this game for free. But listen, I'm another piece of advice though. Really, if you're a player, ask yourself before the game: will I be upset if I lose this if we don't take it seriously? It might just be worth winning.
I don't know why. Oh my god, my brain is so messed up. You know how like when you I don't know what program it is, but you know that oh my god, what is it called? Like it's a tool you use to like put papers together. This has nothing to do with Valorant. Take the highlights off. Yeah, like a paperclip. You know that paperclip that like helps you out when you open like Word documents?
Clippy.
The Clippy, yeah? Imagine Riot Games, shout out to you guys. Pick up Wyatt and do that with Dr. Wyatt. And have him in the bottom right corner and like, hey, you guys need advice? Talk to Dr. Wyatt. And he just pops up in the bottom right corner of like your Valorant gameplay, like looking at the scoreboard. Hey, you want to help, like, break down your stats? Here's Dr. Wyatt to help you out.
You've lost 4 games in a row in ranked. Are you tilted? Talk to Dr. Wyatt.
Listen.
Ask yourself before you go into the next game, am I going to pick Jett again?
Is this a question that rolls through your head, Josh?
No, I don't throw in Valorant, all right? I mean, I don't throw anywhere. These allegations are
all right.
Anyway,
next segment. I watched back the tapes from that Overwatch session the other day just to see what went wrong on Hollywood.
What happened?
Because I was astounded. How are we losing this? I'm playing the greatest game of my fucking life right now. How did we lose? Let me see what Josh was doing. Just earth shatters into the wall, right into the wall at the crucial end game fight. I hear Kurt typing away. He's pulling up the clip.
No.
Yeah, you should be, man.
No. This is a Valorant podcast. I've got a different personality
I know. Listen,
here.
we're going to take this is a little. No. We're going to go around in a circle. This is a little therapy session for us for what you've done to us, Josh. Because we're going to take a little break from talking about Gen.G and Sentinels here. Because before I started playing Valorant, well, not Valorant, Overwatch Review the other day, I took a look at your stream, and lo and behold, what do I see? Your chat redeeming Widowmaker, Sombra, Echo, Doomfist. And there is zero remorse in your face when you are actively throwing the game.
I'm not actively throwing. I'm not
Zero
picking Widowmaker and trying
He
to
plays
miss.
it like the Sentinels. He's just playing for fun.
Yeah,
he's going to try,
for fun.
but he's just playing for fun.
Yeah.
I don't tweet about it. I don't tweet saying, well, I wasn't even trying. I'm out here getting the most shade possible. And I'm just
tired of the fucking Elo assassin known as Joshua Wilkinson just coming out here and sucking me dry.
Yeah.
I like Gen.G. Gen.G, anybody?
I like him.
I like this Sean pickup.
Was popping.
Sean 12590. What a fucking gamer he is, actually, coming into the game.
Yeah.
Coming into Gen.G. He is oh my god.
That is horrific.
Just in case anyone wanted to see that.
Yeah. I like this team now. The additional firepower of Sean, putting him on the duelist role. Holy smokes, this team, I think, has some potential. Yeah. And I think they did pretty well, honestly, for their first showing. For Sean coming into this team, for them switching up presumably the language from French over to English. So I think they've done pretty well, actually, for this kind of showing. Looking forward to what they can do moving forward into the closed qualifiers.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you are from our Overwatch podcast and you're tuning into Valorant and you're trying to figure stuff out, okay, here's the comparison, okay? They got Sean, okay? Gen.G, they used to do like big site executes as a 5-man group, set strats, walking together, okay? They pick up Sean, okay? And Sean plays like I played Winston in 2016, okay? But instead of me using a Tesla gun to just like blast opponents around me, they gave him a fucking Glock, and he's just jumping in, leaping in to the bomb sites, just no hesitation, just run in. And this Winston with the Glock is just spraying people down. Burst fire mode, classic. Oh, you love to see it, okay? The level of tempo and space this guy created for the rest of the team, unparalleled in Valorant. Like, it was unreal, just the level of tempo they had executing on some of these sites.
So Johnny's going to lead off the segment saying that he's the Sean of Overwatch. He's the Sean of 2016 Overwatch.
I used to have numbers in my
I mean,
name.
actually, here's a point. Here's a little
Lord.
Sean point that I don't know. I don't know if anyone's mentioned. I don't think we have on the show, but I remember seeing on his Twitter, and I failed to mention it before. But he was not actually able to play full time until he got signed. He was working at McDonald's. I think he has in his bio like ex-McDonald's employee now after getting signed by Gen.G. So he can actually play the game full time, which is good considering he's really good. Also, GMD in-game leader now, and their style is really good. Go on, Josh.
Yeah, the style has shifted massively. They really have increased the tempo. I don't know what the fuck you were talking about Winston with a Glock. I mean, that is just wild to me.
He was going deep.
He was going pretty deep. Yeah, they had a nice setup where Huynh would dash in and make a lot of space, and Sean was like the guy that was pushing forwards on either another aspect of the site or following in behind Huynh as well. He was great in the clutches as usual. He was fragging out of control. Like the guy's a genuine tier 1 talent and immediately slotted into this team very well. But I think the biggest difference maker has been GMD and his calling. I mean, the fact that you have Sean now allows GMD to play a non-duelist setup where you can play the Omen and the Breach, that all seems fine to me. Maybe running in more on the Breach would be more helpful, but okay, he was still able to get a lot of work done on the Omen now that Huynh and Sean are actually making a lot of space. But the calling and the fact that they have moved away from such a heavy, readable, predictable 5-hit site kind of style, the fact that they've moved away from that and they're playing a little looser has just opened up different avenues for them. They're still getting to grips with it, but it looks very promising.
I really liked Huynn's gameplay this tournament as well. His entering was excellent. It was one of the coolest things to watch. Yeah, their pace was just so much different. But yeah, Huynh was he was playing that aggressive Jett entry, or just getting in deep, throwing down all the cloud bursts, dashing in. He was finding. Huynn's stats weren't out of control, but the kills that he was finding were all high impact, always. He was getting so many high impact entries. It was really, really impressive. And player 1, I liked him on the Cypher quite a bit. He was just a little gremlin in hell on Ascent. The teams could not clear him off of A. He was just finding, like his 1vX play when he's holding down a site, just trying to stay alive, use the natural cover on the map to find a kill, try to find a second, live as long as possible. He was playing really well. I like the changes that they have right now. They were looking good. A lot more firepower with Sean. The attack pacing was better, but their defense has always been strong, and it was looking good. I mean, I think the team has a lot of promise. There are a lot of good teams right now. The more I'm thinking about it, a lot of damn good teams right now.
I'm watching this Sentinels gameplay as well, and it reminded me of a point about them where they're really just using the same comps that they did across the entirety of the Ignition series too. They haven't changed stuff up that much. They've made some small adjustments where Sick is now playing the Breach on all maps apart from Split, which allows Shazam to play a lot more Jett, but they haven't really shown that they've integrated Sick into a lot of their strats and the way that they move around the map. They haven't found big value out of the Breach just yet. So I think that's definitely the next evolution for them. I would even expect them to run it on Split, honestly, once we get to the close qualifier or deeper on in the tournament. I think they're going to actively improve as they go with kind of the integration of Sick on that role. That to me is the key for Sentinels to really unlock their ability to finish first in this tournament as well.
Yeah, I agree. How do we think that? What would our predictions be if for that Gen.G Sentinels rematch?
How Sentinels, they would crush them.
Really? You're that confident?
I think they're gonna come in there bloodthirsty as hell and just absolutely stomp them. I think
they're
it's going to be one of the games.
Prove.
Yeah, exactly. I think the mental for Sentinels will be on.
But I think that Gen.G should only be improving from this point on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Gen.G did end up winning that match.
Yeah, they could. I mean, I think it's a very interesting storyline. And sorry, Bren, for interrupting you. What I wanted to say was, I think it's when you consider Gen.G and the gameplay they showed in, was it NSG X Renegades tournament, where it felt like they were playing dinosaur Valorant at times, where it's like big site executes, playing slow, and like there was nothing creative about their play whatsoever. Sean in this roster has just revitalized the entire team and just revolutionized the way we think about Gen.G and like their trajectory moving forward as well. Because I think it could have been fair before the qualifiers to say like, oh, Gen.G, you know, they're having a downwards trajectory, and you know, like this might not be it. You know, they might have been like the beta kind of stompers, and you know, won't make anything of it. But with Sean into this roster now, they just like rethought the entire way they approach the game, and I think that's going to be very good for their playbook moving forward. And I think it will lend to a lot of new creativity that we didn't see with Gen.G before. So this is really good for them moving forward.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Couldn't agree
I
more.
also want to point out though that the Sentinels Gen.G game is going to be in the groups of the closed qualifier. So even if Sentinels lose, they're not going to probably, as long as they don't lose to somebody else in their group who's much lower rated, they probably will still get through that group anyway and into the main event. So it's not a must-win game for them. I feel like it is. I feel like they're going to approach it as if it is, but even if they get upset again by Gen.G, they can still get through this qualifier by beating other teams, because they'll probably be seeded against different people once they get into the actual bracket.
Do we have the matches yet for the closed qualifier?
I don't believe so. I think people have kind of worked them out based on seeding, but also the seeding sometimes has been a bit wonky, and the players don't seem to know exactly what group they're going to be in. So I think it's it should be easy to deduce, but there might be some weird rules that make it more difficult.
We can move on. Let's talk TSM actually as a team and beating out 100 Thieves. My expectations were kind of my expectations were higher for 100 Thieves, I think, or maybe higher than they should have been coming into this tournament. But I still think the potential of this team is good, despite them losing to TSM, because of all the surprises in this tournament, I thought TSM were going to be looking like one of the weakest teams off the back of the op nerf. Yet this team actually kind of amazed me. I think they have actually improved across the board. They still do some things that are a little bit funky, but I think they've still managed to get value out of Wardell's op, despite the nerfs. He's still able to take surprise angles from away from teams and really surprise. But his rifling which is one of the things that I never really looked at as a strong suit. He is absolutely up there when it comes to rifling. And this is something that, I mean, I think maybe we never actually considered it. Maybe it was, in my mind, it was always like a bit of a joke, the Wardell rifling, because he relied so much on the operator and he was so good with it. But I think this shows that this team is fine in this patch. I was always worried about TSM, but it seems like they are going to be fine in this patch, and they are still one of the better teams in NA currently. This it's exciting, honestly. It's probably the best outcome that we could have had if you're a fan of competitive Valorant, because it means that we haven't lost a top team.
Yeah, for sure. I think his rifling just genuinely improved as well. I mean, I'm assuming he's had to play with rifles a lot more over the past however many weeks or month or so than he had to before. And his rifling looked really good. He's still just a star player. Drone back on the Phoenix for some maps, was playing a lot of Breach. I think he got most of his impact on Phoenix. I still like him on that role. I mean, obviously one of the best Phoenix players in the game, period. Sabrosa, though, was the standout to me.
Oh, dude,
Sabrosa on Omen was the genuine standout for me for TSM. He looks so much more dynamic on Omen than he did on Phoenix, where some of that could be attributed to the fact that at the time when he was playing Duelist, playing Phoenix on every map, he was the in-game leader. So when he's so focused on leading the team, he's not going to be, using as much brain energy on mixing up his own style of play, where he just became pretty formulaic and was very reliant on his own aim. But on Omen, where now Cutler is the main caller from the Sova position, I mean, he was getting tons of value out of his utility. He was playing
so good,
incredibly well. I mean, out of everyone on TSM, he was the standout to me. He was damn good.
Sabrosa, I remember, Josh, during the match, during your companion stream, we were talking about Sabrosa, And it occurred to me there was one instance on Haven, and Sabrosa, he did this the entire tournament long, but he would find himself in positions where he would essentially be alive amongst the enemies. You know what I mean? He would be on a site, and he had managed to wiggle his way around, whether by using smokes or just the chaos of the situation, and he would have a kill shot on a player, but he would always hold his fire, get more information, gather a bit more, play patiently, and always get more out of a situation than he probably should have had. In many situations. And you put it perfectly. You said that he seems to consistently find himself in these situations in the first place, which is step one. Like, it's okay. It's one part to actually have the presence of mind to play in a certain way, but Sabrosa actively plays in a way that allows him to be set up in those situations to get the double kills when they're not suspecting it. And he did this the entire tournament. It was insane to watch.
Yeah, Sabrosa's playing magically. And this is, to me, this is back to Sabrosa when he was playing his best Valorant, way back when he was playing the Brim.
Yes,
because it's freed him up to be able to play that kind of style. He doesn't have to entry anymore. He doesn't have to call for the team. I mean, he's obviously going to be calling his own plays, but not IGLing. And that has just freed him up to make these lovely creative pushes. And he's one of those players where, because he's so confident in his own aim, he's able to do some slightly sillier, goofier things. He'll push and just get himself into a weird angle, because if he gets challenged while he's pushing, he's confident that he's not going to be able to, that he is going to be able to win that duel and won't just leave his team a player down. So I love players that play like that. I think Sabrosa was absolute magic. The role that Cutler was on as well, he was getting pretty decent value there, and Hayes looked pretty decent in his kind of more solid role as well. He came up big in a couple of rounds for them too. To me, the only weak spot for TSM right now is Drone's Breach.
Yeah.
And I say that both in terms of the value he's getting from his utility, but more importantly, arguably for TSM, is the fragging, I think. Because he finds himself at the back of the pack a lot, you know, trying to set up his team and trying to be the quintessential supportive breach player. It just isn't really working to the fullest extent for TSM. They're getting some value from the agent, but they're not getting drone value from drone. Like his stats, he has over a 1 KD, it's 1.03, but then his KPR is 0.67. It's really far down there.
That
and this kind of
not like the drone we know.
Yeah, and Drone was such a power player on the Phoenix and the Sova. So you really are missing a big fragging component for TSM. Now they've made up for it because Wardell is a beast on the rifling, and Sabrosa has leveled up his impact in these rounds massively. But I think to unlock the true power of TSM, like the true actual we can win this tournament power, they need that drone breach to be firing on all cylinders. And I don't know whether that's him playing greedier or him just playing more with the agent so that he knows that the times where he can have more impact or something, but there needs to be work done there in order to get more drone out of the breach, because we know what a fabulous player this guy can be, but at the moment he's, I don't know. Honestly, he's like third at best in terms of the impact and maybe fourth behind Cutler at times.
Yeah. I feel like they'll figure it out over time, though. I think that TSM is generally, I mean, this is me speculating, but I feel like generally TSM is one of the more boring teams in the North American scene. It's like, okay, well, they rely on Wardell's operating or whatever, and, you know, they don't have this like big fragging guy like Tense or Sean or whatever, but I still have a lot of confidence in this lineup because I don't think people give enough credit to the experience some of these players have, and they're like fundamentals and like the way they approach the game. Like you mentioned earlier about how was it you said Cutler? No, Sabrosa consistently finds it like 2Ks and like 3Ks. I think that goes for more players in the team as well. Like even Haste, like he didn't have the most amazing games ever. But I genuinely felt, and you might disagree with this, that Haste were in position sometimes to rack up a 2K, whatever. And I think that mostly comes from like your rotations on the map, the position you find yourself in. And that's where I actually find that TSM find their advantages a lot in that they have great fundamental experience about how map control works and their rotations and how they should play that out. They're not very interesting in that regard, and I certainly think that the thing that they should improve on is these like small combos that like could change the tempo as well, where like how to utilize drone to like breach flash in and how to play off those small combos. But I don't want to discredit like the experience this lineup has, because they have a ton of CS experience on this lineup, and I really do think they have great fundamentals on this team, and I think that is what carries them to some of these wins against some of these other teams in the region. So I think if they can just build on that and integrate some of these tempo shifts you see in Valorant, where small abilities can make a big difference, I genuinely think that TSM still has what it takes to, across the board, individually have players step up and compete with some of the best in the region. So I have more confidence in TSM than most, I think.
I agree. And I agree about Hayes as well. Hayes has always been a player on that team who will just randomly deliver them a 2K, a 3K from nowhere. He'll just win some 1vx somewhere on the map. I always think he's been a valuable asset to that team, and he's a good clutch player as well. And I think, Cutler on the Sova. I mean, Cutler, I don't think is ever going to be like a standout fragger on that team, but I like him in the role of in-game leader, and I like him on the role of Sova. I think he was getting more value out of the Sova than he was on Cypher. He was looking like a better player on the Sova than when he was on Cypher. He was definitely finding more frags. And I actually think that lends them to potentially maybe being better than ever if they have drone firing on all cylinders, as you said, Josh. But then they also have a more comfortable role for Cutler where he's providing more value, and you have Sabrosa not having to worry about leading the team, and he's going to be this crazy good Omen player. That is a really scary team.
Yeah. They were also one of the few teams to use Viper on Split as well.
With varied results.
Needed some work.
Yeah, it was them, Slimey Boogermen, ANDBOX. There was a couple of other teams that ran it as well during the tournament, but not as notable. I think people are figuring out that it's really powerful, but TSM haven't got the value out of it yet. And so what I find impressive, though, is that they're willing to experiment still and work with what they believe is good and what they believe the good agents are right now. They're not just kind of spamming what they are comfortable at. They've got, Drone playing an agent that clearly he's not having as much impact, but they believe Breach is super strong, which it is. And they've got the Viper, which Hayes clearly isn't comfortable on. I mean, you see the way that he's playing on it. He doesn't look like he's got it all down, but they're still trying it and making it work. And this is the perfect time to experiment. I feel more comfortable. I feel more confident about TSM here after these qualifiers than I thought I would be by a long shot. I thought I was about to say the same thing.
I was ready
after
to
they lost the map
off.
to Renegades. It was like a 2-1 victory over Renegades, and I watched that game and I was like, "Oh, they're kind of sloppy, trying a bunch of different stuff." And Hayes Viper looks really bad. And then they were continuing to adapt and improve over the course of the tournament, and just their fundamentals, the way that they trade for each other, the way that they play angles off each other, the way that they're always there to back each other up. Like the gameplay is just so fundamentally sound from them in a way that it isn't for a lot of NA teams.
Yeah, that was odd, that clip. Anyway, on the other side of it, we've got 100 Thieves, and this is a team that I think it's fair to say we're all particularly quite high up on them coming into this tournament with the acquisitions they made.
Yeah, for sure.
They've still got a ways to go. The number one thing for me when I was watching 100 Thieves that I want to see them improve, that I think you would see drastic improvements, is increasing their playbook a little bit, making sure that they can always have some sort of play to make at any time, because you often saw when they were playing in these matches, they were falling back on the same defaults quite often. And I think that will get figured out pretty quickly. And they're still at times as well tied into that kind of CS style of slowly trying to take map control, not really getting the maximum value out of the Valorant utility, the utility that you can use in Valorant. It's much more varied compared to a game like Counter-Strike, where 3 of these players have come from. So there's a couple of minor things that I can see 100 Thieves fixing up, and actually seeing some pretty good results, I think, immediately off the back of that.
I mean, they're already at a really good level for a team that's been around for I actually don't know how long they've been scrimming for, but I would say like a month.
Yeah, probably like a month, month
No,
and a
I think
half.
a bit longer than that.
Really?
Remember we were talking
Okay.
about the.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
it's-
actually, to be fair, I didn't realize it was so long ago, but I think it was early August that Nitro at least joined the team. That was announced.
Sure, but
It's probably like
they-
a month and a half or so.
Asuna and Dicey have only really been around
Yeah.
for like the last
Yeah, I
month
think
and a
about a
bit
month.
max. So anyway, a good level from them. But yeah, like you said, the slow pace and the respect that they give their opponents, I think, was the biggest issue for them.
Yeah.
When you watch them, you know that they can go toe to toe with the best teams when it comes to the. Oh, this was just the most horrific throw round in
dreadful.
the world. Actually,
Oh,
this was
How
the
does- how does
the
Kurt
biggest
do it?
throw of the tournament.
How does Kurt
he
always
this
find
clip?
the greatest moments
God.
to show? I mean, this was this was so bad.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was where they threw this series away, though, as well, because it is very possible that they could have won Haven here. They were 0-1 down against TSM, but if they win that round and instead it's 7-9 and they
economy
break
would have
the
been
economy
broke.
of TSM, yeah,
TSM's
they
economy
would
would
have been in a great
broke.
position.
Yeah, they could have.
But they just absolutely threw it away. I mean,
just
just
dwelling
really
on the
quickly.
past, Josh. You know?
Anyway, yeah. My point was, though, TSM looked really good in the clutch. 100 Thieves look really good in the clutch. They've got many players that can step up and do that. Their individual skill just across the board is super high. But when you see them play, they are very slow paced. They're not cripplingly slow like T1, but they're still quite slow. They put a lot of respect on their opponents and try and catch them pushing by just playing statically in positions and tick the clock down without actively gathering information or forcing out utility from their opponents. And I think that's something that they will learn as they go on as well, is that playing at a higher tempo and actually using your utility, forcing out utility from your opponents is going to make those side hits so much better when they actually come in at the end. And even if you want to play this slow, your executes have to be sublime, and they haven't quite got the like perfect executes down yet. So I think that this is a team with buckets of potential, but they had a bit of a I don't know, not the incredible performance that their fans were expecting, I imagine.
Well, I also think.
Yeah.
Still.
Sorry to interrupt here. I just
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
add,
go,
I
go.
think that this team also probably, for one, they've got the highest expectations out of a lot of the teams in the qualifiers, and they had the unfortunate aspect, I suppose, of playing against TSM when none of us really had high expectations for TSM, and TSM looked a lot better when they were playing against 100 Thieves. I think. If you were to compare the two bracket sides, I would definitely argue that the side that Cloud9 was on was by far and away the weakest. And I think 100
Yes,
Thieves, maybe we
sure.
didn't get to see, quite as far as a run. I can't remember exactly who they played earlier.
They played Moon Raccoons and Dignitas, which are both, those are
Pretty
actually
good
some
opponents.
pretty good opponents to
Yeah.
beat.
I mean, they
If you're beating-
wrecked Dig. That was
Yeah, if
not even
you're-
close.
If you're wrecking Dig and beating Moon Raccoons, you're already putting yourself in the kind of easily top 8 in North America. And probably they would have beaten a couple of other teams within, like, you've got to favor them against the Slimey Boogermen, probably. You've got to favor them against T1. You've got to favor them against, probably those two teams. I mean, I don't know really how they would match up against Gen.G, Sentinels, Cloud9, that kind of stuff. So you're probably looking at around the 5th best team, maybe 6th best team in this bracket.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team with the most potential in the North American region. And as you three pointed out several times during the companion stream, like, it's so impressive the amount of fragging power on this team and their ability to win in the clutch as well. And then combine that with like very smart individuals like Steel picking up the Killjoy. And he was very determined. Like, when he came out of Pop Flash, watched Pop Flash, he said like the Killjoy gameplay was really bad in Pop Flash. And he was like super disappointed with it. And he was going to pick up this role himself and make Killjoy good. Obviously, Mitch looked really good on the Killjoy as well now in this tournament. But like, Steel looked really good on the Killjoy. And then you have players like Nitro as well, who's like a super smart individual. Like, this team has it all. So like Bren said, like, we had high expectations for 100 Thieves, but for good reason. Like, their fragging power, Hiko's ability to win the clutch, and then you have fragging power, smarts, everything. So I think 100 Thieves, I mean, they'll just continue to improve from here. Like, this is this could be a monster team moving forward in a few months.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing them move forward.
They do actively need to keep working on stuff though, because this closed qualifier is not a gimme for them. If you're sat around the 6th place, it is not a guarantee that you're going to be able to make it to the top 4 from this tournament, right? Like that, you are unlikely in some sense to be able to make it through. So
they're gonna have to play against at least towards maybe the end of the bracket one really tough opponent.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have to beat a top, probably like a top 4, top 5 or so team if they want to make it to the top 4, and that is a tough ask from what we've seen. I think,
in my opinion, I think they have a week. The one thing I think that would be the easiest to pick up is just increasing the playbook. To change the pace of your team requires, I think, longer than a week to do.
Sure.
Because that is stuff that is ingrained into the way that you play as a team, and it's something that I think that will naturally change over time. The more you actively think about in introducing maybe some set plays, maybe some fast executes, some split plays, anything like that. I do want to see them
around the map.
Say again?
Or just some small utility combos around the map, because some of them
that's what I mean by the set plays. I want to see some like 2-man plays that you can do with any 2 players, a variety of stuff that they just expand it with, because you can go for some very hard, fast, aggressive captures of map control with any 2 agents if you know how to combo it well enough. And that's one of the things that I think you can learn in a week that can, honestly, with a team like this, is just going to elevate their gameplay naturally, because we've gone over it. They're so talented. Mechanically, individually, they are an incredibly talented team. But a week is the time that they've got to work with, and it is going to be tough. They're not a lock, as you said. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
They still have time
for the right odds. I would put $50 on them winning first strike.
Oof.
What?
Like if I was in Vegas, I was 2 gin and tonics in, and Wyatt told me, hey, Johnny, wouldn't it be funny if we bet some money here on like who's gonna win first strike? And I was like, well, how much money do I get for betting 100 Thieves? Like 6 to 1. Like I probably
6
put down 50.
to 1. I mean, that is not enough, I feel.
Yeah,
it'd be a cheeky, fun little bet, Like I don't recommend gambling. Please, adhere to your state rules. Like it's not safe.
Those are the
for
odds
everyone.
you give them.
Be wary, like whatever the guidelines are. But if I was in Vegas, hypothetically, in my brain vacuum, then I could potentially see myself, looking at this 100 Thieves.
What is a brain vacuum? Is that?
I don't know. I just made it up on the spot. I just made it up on the spot. It just describes my mental, most hours of the day. So I'm just putting it out there. If I was to make a cheeky bet on an underdog.
Yeah,
1 month away.
I think you're thinking as well, like in terms of how much this team could improve until December the 3rd, right? Until the main event. Yeah, I could see this team making some drastic improvements.
Finding a style with Sky, start from not from
That's
zero.
The thing. I was going to say,
in
the macro sense, this is one of the teams that should be given more time. I mean, you can be critical and analyze their play and see the mistakes in it and hope they improve them, but also they are one of the teams that deserves more time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the other Cloud9 team then, and their loss to the Slimey Boogermen. Boogermen.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to throw this in here because both of these teams are interesting, and both of these teams deserve talking about, I think, despite not really being big
I
names.
really like both of these teams, honestly. I thought that they had a lot of potential. There are a lot of, I'll say it, a lot of incels really upset that C9 White had a high seed in the open qualifiers, but the nature of a 128-team qualifier tournament means that the seeding is not going to be accurate. Would it a 6 seed? No, probably not. But this is a team, I think, with quite a bit of potential. And despite them losing to an unsigned team, this was the best performing unsigned team in the open qualifiers.
Yeah. I mean, they made it far. They beat the new BBG roster that it looks really strong on paper. If you look at the new Built by Gamers roster, pretty damn good. I mean, the Boogermen were a good team. And I was excited to watch C9 White. They were the first team that I watched when the tournament started, and I was immediately impressed. I mean, we had touched on how talented that Jazzykins, the Jett main on their team, had seen before. She's still really good. She's the aggressive Jett entrier player. Very entertaining to watch. The Raze player on their team, Annie Dro, she's also really good. I mean, the thing that I immediately enjoyed about watching their games and what makes them an entertaining team is that they're really aggressive. They are a fast-paced team. And with that fast pace, they were dunking on the teams up until the Boogermen. I mean, they were just rolling them. Their attacks were their attack sides were really strong. But yeah, like Annie and Jazzy were really entertaining to watch. And the breach on their team, I think, was kind of flew under the radar, maybe, at least in the discussion I was seeing. Alexis, she was really good as well. I think the roster is pretty well-rounded, and I can definitely see them being a pretty solid, like, I don't know where they'll end up in the rankings, but like somewhere around that, maybe I could see them ending up somewhere in that like 10th to 15th area in NA. They look like they have a lot of potential at the moment.
Yes, well, without a doubt in my mind. I like their play style in particular, like you were saying, Wyatt, about the aggressive tempo that C9 White play at. It's so reminiscent of a lot of the top teams in Brazil, which we go on and on and on about, or at least I do, just because it's so fun to watch. And I think it is a really valid play style in terms of throwing some teams off, because there's nothing better to really just dismantle what a team is thinking than just chucking a Jett dashing. You know, just straight through the choke point, breaking ankles, trying to basically combo at a much faster pace than the opposition can. On the other side of things, though, as well, the Slimey Boogermen, I think they've got a lot of these. This tournament, or at least this open qualifiers, was so good at being able to spot so much talent that's just ripe for the taking right now for a lot of teams if you're trying to make any upgrades. I think it was Anderson, the Omen player.
Yeah.
Really solid player on the Omen. It's a role that you actually don't see many people stand out on, to be honest. Like it's a role not suited for that. But in terms of raw fragging and just the kind of the general plays that they were making, really impressive stuff. Was it Welshie? I don't even know what his name is. Welshie. Dude, Welshie was actually pretty sick as well in a lot of circumstances, and played a lot of very niche roles, like the Viper was seeing some playtime as well. So this kind of match was a great one to just watch in general, because we saw the potential, I think, of C9 White and then losing to one of the better unsigned teams, but also of the unsigned teams, the Slimey Boogermen. I think you're going to see some of these players potentially be hopping around or poached, or at least maybe even the whole team picked up at some point if there's another org that wants to get involved.
Yeah, what I was impressed by with the Slimey Boogermen is that normally these teams are carried by like star duelist players. You know, they'll just find some guy that's cracked and they'll throw them on the duelist and they'll win games based off that. But that didn't seem to be the case with these guys. They had good setups and good kind of team play, and that seemed to be the thing that was really carrying them. And in fact, actually, I think their duelist player instinct was the bottom fragger in a lot of the games that they played. He seemed to be somebody that wasn't quite hanging at the top level. But the other guys on the team, like their Omen and their Killjoy and the Viper, they're finding value from these team-based compositions and team-based styles and how they're actually setting things up. And I thought they looked impressive. I thought they looked like they had a good, more so than them being poached for their top talent. I felt when I was watching like they were a team that I would like to add more firepower to.
You mean pick up the whole
keep
team,
the core? Maybe not pick up the whole team, but pick up the core of the team, or at least a couple of players from the
structure.
team. Yeah, give them some structure. Give them some other players that maybe are veterans or big fraggers to be able to play with. And you look like you've got yourself a pretty nasty team there. Like in my head, if you combine this team with some of the truly mental individual fraggers that we saw across the rest of the tournament, like those few key star players on otherwise not very good teams, you've got yourself a nasty good roster. I think a couple of roster changes, and these are the Slimy Poggermen rather than the Slimy Boogermen.
This is what is such
Oh
a
my
breath of
God.
fresh air with a Slimey Boogermen. I don't think anyone's ever said that sentence in human history. But wow, that's a first. But it's like the open qualifiers really sets teams like this up to, you know, make a name for themselves and stand out, and being able to be signed by an org. Why? It's
Fucking slimy Poggerman. Sorry, Johnny.
Well,
Go
weren't
on.
you guys joking off stream that we should pick them up ourselves and make them like the Plat chat Boogermen?
Yeah.
The Plat
Plat
chat Boogermen.
Boogerman, yeah. But yeah, no, I think I do think you're pretty correct with that, Josh. Just throw Silenx on this team. Get the Silenx injection into the arm of the
Zill
Boogerman
or
and-
something.
Yeah.
Zill.
Silenx, Zill, and then you've got Welshie and Anderson, and then I don't know who you want to keep as well, like Dev or something. And you've got yourself like a pretty potent team there, I think, that would be capable of some big upsets. Not that, I mean, the Slimy Boogermen themselves are capable of big upsets, though. I don't want to feel that, I don't want to say that they couldn't do anything without changes. They really could. This is the kind of team that could make a kind of like, you know, these are the kind of teams that could just discover how to play with Sky really well and end up knocking out some big organizations from the tournament.
Yeah. This split map we're seeing now, it was actually so tense. And for a moment, we thought that Cloud9 and Wyatt were actually going to bring it back. Because Jazzy had some like insane clutch moments on this map. And then Annie played super aggressive as well with the Raze. And she actually had one of the highest ADRs in the tournament. And obviously she played a ton of Raze, so those numbers are going to be inflated. But still, it just proves like how much effectiveness they got through in the start of the rounds. Obviously, Slimy Boogermen, they ended up winning the map and go through. But it's just so entertaining to watch Cloud9 Wyatt go up against this team, because as you mentioned before, like their aggression and like how they really take it to some of these teams. It really also snowballs into like a situation where you have really streaky players where like, oh, you know, if Jazzikin starts popping off on the Jett, like she's just gonna repeatedly just come in and frag and get the confidence and just do more of those plays, and it just snowballs into a really entertaining match. So that's actually a really entertaining split to watch.
And also, it's women at the top of the esport. It's genuinely fucking pog. Like this is inspirational for other women that are getting into the game as well. And
keep using POG in a real life setting, and I'm kicking you off the podcast.
yeah, sorry. I don't know why. It's because of the Slimy Boogermen. They've got it in my head. Yeah, it is really
sick, though,
cool
Josh,
to see, because not only is it like inspirational to other women to be able to show like, oh yeah, like I actually can compete at the top level if I put in the time or have a bunch of individual talent and we find a group that works well together. But it's also the potential for so many women and like a full group of women to be able to make it to the top as well is, as far as I'm aware, kind of unparalleled in other esports. Now, that's if they continue to get kind of drive towards the top 10 in North America, there have been, you know, occasional women at the top in Overwatch, for example, and there have been all-women teams in other games, but they've always kind of flopped because they've been pushed too far. Like people push them into situations where they shouldn't, in order to like, they're not ready for that level of competition and they end up flopping. I'm thinking of like the League of Legends team that just got crushed in some like Russian LCS, I think, because they really wanted an all-women's team, but the level of competition was wrong. So then they just get trashed, and it's fucking horrible to watch.
It's more damaging for the overall cause, right?
But this, I mean, this is just, it was an open bracket. They honestly got a little bit unlucky running into the Boogermen as well, and they still performed really well. I mean, this is just sick. I'm so looking forward to them playing in the next qualifier. And I hope they do really well. I hope they just continue to improve.
It's really promising and inspiring. And I think that's why we're so excited about this team. It's because we know that they can be even better. Like the way they played and like the plays they put out, like it was very inspiring and promising for this team. So I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah, just to put some context as well into some of the stats as well. Who do you guys think the number one omen in terms of like the raw numbers being put out was over the course of this tournament? Not Anderson, but who do you think the number one omen was? It's someone we've already discussed.
Sabrosa?
Yeah, it is.
Maybe
Sabrosa.
Oh, is it Sabrosa?
It's Sabrosa who's the number one. And second to that is Anderson in terms of the raw numbers being put out. So these are the players that are kind of being put up against. I mean, I filtered that as well for 150 rounds played for the Omen players. But I mean, below that, you've got Nitro, GMD, Mummy, Zom, Shinobi, you know, all the players below Anderson and these other players. This is a team with a lot of potential, and they were quite good. So, yeah, I mean, on both sides of things, I think you've got some great takeaways from this match overall. What else we got? This is a disappointment here. NRG's debut.
Oh lordy.
This was disappointing. I think we had so much hype coming into this tournament. I think of wanting to see success of NRG.
Yes.
We have been following this roster. They've been announcing player after player after player. They've just given us a slow burner, and they come out and they give us some uninspiring gameplay.
Yeah, uninspiring. Definitely.
I think that's the apt word.
It is
right?
it is the apt word to describe what we witnessed. But again, another team that falls into my mental category of give them a couple months and then we'll evaluate where they're at, because they are very new. I mean, I'm sure
extremely, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Daps probably played the game here and there when it came out, that kind of thing. But as far as I know, NRG just came to him, said, "Hey, will you build us a Valorant team and be a Valorant pro?" And he said, "Sure." And then just started playing. And that's pretty much when the roster was announced, because it happened so suddenly, given that NRG had not long before their team announcement had said they weren't even looking to get a team. And then suddenly like that, they're building a team. So you got to give them some time. Their gameplay was fairly slow, uninspiring.
Extremely slow. I mean, extremely.
Yeah,
it was
fairly
like
slow, probably
slow.
A little too passive of a word to describe it.
Were they worse than T1?
Well,
They were very similar, and in fact didn't really get the opportunity to develop more because they didn't play more games. They just got knocked out by complexity. But yeah, when I watched NRG, they reminded me of T1 in terms of like having these painfully slow and uninspiring map defaults, and just that being the style that they play.
So the interesting part here was that we actually had Mike's HD from Immortal Minds on the companion stream. As he just hit his elbow on the table.
He just
Come on,
fucking
Bren.
right into the funny bone.
Oh no!
Right
not
into
the funny
bone. Just
That's okay,
slammed it on the
continue.
table.
Nothing,
Not the
nothing
kick
bad
W
here.
bone. Oh no!
Don't want to distract you. I've already fucking
so
stroked the cat and sneezed to death. So go ahead.
So Mike's HG actually said that this was very much the play style that Daps brought into Counter-Strike as well, where he would let the timers go down, and then they would execute onto a site or whatever. So they just translated this play style into Valorant. And I think that is one of the bigger problems, because this is not Counter-Strike. You have all of these abilities, and you see some of these teams play way faster and utilize some of these small ability setups. And it just looks like NRG, like they don't... Not like all the players across the board, but the style they're playing, it's not suited for Valorant. Like, I don't think this is it, fam.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you want to see, actually, in action, some of the differences, I guess, between Valorant and CS, Sean Garris streamed some of the qualifiers. He was playing in the open qualifiers with his team, with, I think, Freakazoid and a bunch of other players. And a lot of them basically just still playing CS on a regular basis. And they were playing some scrims and whatnot, and Sean was streaming from his POV. I don't know if he's got it on like subscriber-only VODs or what, but maybe he'll stream in the next open qualifier. Who knows? But he was actively going through as well and explaining stuff to his team that come from CS of how you need to play the game. And it is a lot of early utility being used. It's unfamiliar, I think. In CS, it's slow-paced. If you think about the utility you've got, you're pretty limited per person, and you're limited by the map design in terms of how you can use that utility to execute onto sites and take map control. But in Valorant, you can get much more creative with it. And that was the thing that he was trying to hammer home to his team at the time, which was that you got to be careful. You got to be ready to, throw up the smoke onto the arrows, or be careful that they're going to be pushing and taking fountain control, for example, on bind early. Stuff that you can't really expect in CS. And that kind of pace of the game that teams have already discovered, that's what these CS players who are making the recent switch over are struggling with. And you see that in the gameplay.
Definitely agree. Hard agree with you there. I mean, that's something that just needs to change. This complexity NRG game as well. NRG looked like they were doing pretty well on Split, but complexity ended up coming back. We saw a clip from Haven there when they won 13-5, and then they didn't win a single round on Ascent. They literally got 13-0'd on Ascent when it came to that. They lost every single attacking round because it was just painfully slow, and they didn't really understand how to take the map control away. But in terms of the roster, Kohler looks like a freak on Duelist. His actual mechanics look ridiculously good. Now, I think that some of his utility usage and his positioning and like how he plays the map is not there yet and will develop as he plays more and more Duelist. But his raw aim is fucking bonkers, actually.
Yeah,
it's really
it
good.
is
He's
really
just
good.
ripping people's heads off left, right, and center. And then EU was playing well too.
Yeah.
That's a player that really looks like no matter what role he's on, he's going to put up good performances. He's playing the breach and the Sova for this team, which was a little unusual. And he's not calling as well, presumably, because that's Dap's job. But he was playing really well. So this team's got pieces. I think, obviously, XSET is probably not going to continue on the trial with them after how poorly this NRG performance went. And he's normally a duelist player anyway. He was coming in to play the Cypher for NRG. So, that's not... Hopefully that doesn't get held against him because probably he's a much better duelist than he is
to
on
shoot him some
Cypher.
bail. Yeah. He has impressed me when I watched him on Duelist before. He has had very good games on Reyna. He looks good on Duelist. This just wasn't the role for him. And then also slotting into a team that's still figuring itself out was a recipe for him to look like the problem. But he is a good player.
Yeah, but I think if NRG get a true dedicated Cypher player and then also work a lot on how their strategy goes, this isn't a terrible roster. It's just a terrible first performance because they're so new.
I mean, it's interesting seeing these players who are just switching over from CS now versus the players who switched over at the beginning, because it is what we see is so reminiscent of Valorant from that time 5-6 months ago now, but because the players who have already switched over have developed the meta to an extent, the people who are just switching over now will be able to acclimate at a much faster pace given they study the top teams.
Right? They're not figuring it out.
Right, they're not. They don't have to figure it out. I mean, they shouldn't be thinking they have to figure it out. They have teams that they can look at and study to just get acclimated more quickly now, right? So, NRG does need a little bit of time, but definitely some positives to look at. EU and Kohler were crazy. And I think that the reason they did get 13-0'd on that Ascent game, or part of it at least, was that they were having Kohler on Breach in that game, and their utility usage, they weren't ready for that level of team play and utility interaction with multiple players. If they just had Kohler on the Phoenix running around fragging, probably wouldn't have been a 13-0 because their individual skill was getting them so many rounds. Because Kohler and EU they both look like legit top-tier riflers. So the roster looks good. Just got to give them more time to get acclimated with the state of the game.
Yeah.
I don't want EU to be stuck in slow-paced jail once again.
True.
Just let him loose.
Yeah,
let him play
true.
the game.
Yeah.
But I agree with you.
I think these are all very reasonable points. Josh is missing, which means that I am no longer locked down. I have free reign. The control of this podcast is mine. We're going to do something different here. We're actually on a time limit. We've got like a couple of minutes left, and we have a lot of segments to get through. So I think we're just going to go over all the upsets that have happened, with all the major ones at least, and just kind of discuss very briefly what our thoughts are on them. So the first one's going to be XSET beating Immortals. For the first upset here, Immortals going out. This was disappointing. I'm a big Immortals fan. I don't really get tied to organizations, but I'm tied to this org because I like the coaching staff. And I like some of the players as well. I like Gangster. This is a team that I think, they're definitely not going to be happy with the way that they played. We're talking upsets, Josh.
XSET Immortals. Yeah, I think the thing... Immortals definitely had that honeymoon period phase for the Renegades tournament where everything's just popping off. Everybody's firing on all cylinders. And now they kind of got brought back down to reality, going up against a team who have been steadily rising the ranks. XSET have just been improving consistently. They finally just got all their players signed. They picked up Did, another upcoming solid player from the Tier 2 scene, ex-Mamba Mode. So... tough opponent, honestly. XSET are going to be one of the better teams going into this final bracket here, I think, with a lot to prove. And Immortals, they didn't look as fiery as they did in Renegades. I mean, it just wasn't the same level of individual just insanity pop-off moments that we were witnessing in that tournament. And that's, they do have to start, for them, I mean, you can't always just look at that first tournament and just have that be your expectation of them forever. There is going to be a a reset where they do genuinely have to now build. They have a good foundation, but they have to build from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pop-up thing is, I think, so accurate here because they were just everything was clicking
Shot Up
for
was
them.
having
They're all
a
hitting shots.
real game, dog.
Yeah,
in the Renegades tournament, and
well, that's what we said as well. Is that Shot Up, if he could keep that level up, would immediately be a top 5 player in North America. But the next tournament, I mean, he certainly looked like a good player, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire in the same kind of way. So that doesn't mean that this is going to be their level moving forwards either. This could be, an underperformance for them. It's one of those things where you don't quite know because we've only seen 2 tournament showings for this team, but they do look wildly different in terms of the ways that they performed. I think it's all about setting that foundation, though. You have the right players. You need to develop your strategy so that the players don't have to pop off in order to win.
Yeah, I think they were just a victim of the upsets in the tournament. Like, I wouldn't read too much into it. Like, it's worrying, of course, because you got a new roster and you don't want to lose to like bad teams or whatever. But I wouldn't get too paranoid about it. Like, this will happen once in a blue moon. It's a new roster. They have some things to figure out. But I don't think it's indicative of their long-term success with this roster, because I think they've showed appropriately that they have incredible talent on this roster. And Immortals as well is a fantastic organization in developing talent like that. So I wouldn't read into this too much, but it's disappointing, of course, because we had such high expectations of Immortals. I bought into the Immortal stocks, and I was sitting there with my bag, and then they lost, and I just lost all my money. So obviously very disappointed with that. But
would you? Sorry,
no, you can go on.
I was going to say, would you rather, if you're Immortals, would you want to go out here in the round of 32, or would you want to go out in the round of 16? Because the advantage of going out in a round of 16 is you get more opportunities to qualify because you get to play in a closed qualifier. But the downside of that is if you were to qualify in a round of 16 and not make it through, because statistically you would have been a lower seed and you would be going up against harder teams, so it's much harder to make that top 4, you then have even less time to prep for Sky coming in.
Well, yeah.
For Icebox coming in. This is the point that you were making.
If you know you're going to go out somehow, if you've seen it in the crystals that you know you're going to be eliminated at the round of 16, then it's better,
but it's the risk reward. Like, even ignoring the fact that you had an omnipotent knowledge of you going out in a round of 16 or in the close qualifiers, would you still prefer the actions that have transpired so far? Would you prefer to have gone out here? Because now you are essentially building around, you can be one of the trendsetters when it comes to Sky. You can take the open qualifier 2 by storm.
The thing is, it doesn't make any difference, though. In my opinion, that's just totally overblown. Because you think about, like, okay, if this team had made it to the next round, if they just win this game against XSET, they qualify for the closed qualifier, right? And so Sky dropped today, Monday, and the qualifier is in 2 days' time.
Yep.
So you're not going to be scrimming with that. You're just going to be scrimming Skyless. You're going to be doing your best until you get knocked out at some point. I mean, probably November 5th is when you would get knocked out of the tournament. Now, you either make it or you don't, right? If you make it, obviously, huge. You've done it. You've succeeded. In the likely scenario where you don't make it, you might have still booked your ticket straight to the next closed qualifier, which is a huge result for you and your organization. And even if you don't, you've only wasted legitimately 2, maximum 3 days of Sky practice.
Yeah.
So the amount of time you've worked, because this patch got pushed back, really that is not even a thing anymore, in my opinion. Like,
now that you've laid it out,
I did forget that the patch got pushed back, even though we talked about that. But I didn't really register in terms of the dates with the timing. But
I think it's a reasonable argument to make until you lay it out like that with the timeline, right? Until you think about how much time they actually have.
Pushed back, it just you're exchanging 3 days of extra practice for a chance of qualification. Like, actually, the way that the world worked out with this patch, it hasn't given them any advantage over the teams that make it to the close qualifiers. It's like both of you. It's a genuine. It's a rough situation for Immortals to be in, I think.
Anyway, we got more upsets to talk about. We need to. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was just going to say that, Bren, I think you have a good point as well. If you wanted to specialize in Icebox, you could do that because it's worked in other esports. You specialize in assault maps, Overwatch or whatever.
Crazy,
you find a niche. You could.
I mean, Icebox isn't even in, though. Icebox isn't in for the next qualifier. It's only in for the main event. You would have to specialize in Sky. You would have to find that. that
Yeah.
works.
You could. If the
Which
attitude
could
was
happen.
right, you could.
Could happen. LG beat ANDBOX, which was a big upset in my opinion because I was high up on ANDBOX coming into this tournament.
I was so high on ANDBOX.
I didn't realize it, but I think LG was probably underrated a bit in our minds because Thief wasn't playing with them in the Renegades tournament, so they went out fairly early with a Merc. And Thief is probably their best player, or at least one of. I think Thief and a Proto are the 2 stars on LG. And he's their star duelist, at least. Obviously, an important role. So, without having him, we kind of just gleamed over their previous result. But LG have been looking really promising in the Tier 2 space. So, solid team, but yeah, still quite an upset.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing.
I mean,
ANDBOX,
extremely disappointing though, and to go
okay,
out
Josh,
in that
I
fashion.
was just adding a little bit of that British sugar sprinkle over it. Just saying it's okay, lads. Don't worry. Always next week.
But when you look that impressive coming out of a tournament like that, you absolutely expect to at least go into the next level of qualification. They got knocked out in the round of 32, right? So they ended up not making it to the next round of qualification. They're one of those teams that is now, I mean, the expectations were for them to easily make top 16. They looked like a top 10 team in NA when they actually performed in the most recent tournament. And it didn't quite come together here. It seemed like their team play was a little off and they just didn't really get the ball rolling during this match. They ended up going out 2-0 and it wasn't, I mean, it was close, but it was close in a weird way where they just, they went up 11 rounds on Haven and then lost the next 13. It was like truly tragic shit happening where, okay, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, that's a clear problem.
Yeah, and on Bind, what was so strange about that map was you could tell that they were sort of tactically ahead of LG, but they were using so much brain power that they outthought themselves and just lost. They just crumbled to their own giant brains, just weighed them down. I mean, it was actually pretty, that was another tragic map, honestly. Their attack side just fell apart from several rounds from them just overthinking the rotations, just not playing off the advantages they'd already gained for themselves.
Yeah, and their attack utterly let them down when it came to Haven. I mean, they've clearly got some things to hit the drawing board with there, because that was awful to watch.
Woof, that was woof.
Woof. All right.
that woof?
Okay.
Woof.
Moving on. Equinox over FaZe. So FaZe clan. This is a team. So I mean, we said we'll give them the whole of the first strike event.
Yeah.
So we're gonna give them this North American event. They've still got a couple of qualifiers to go. But
are we cutting FaZe too
I
much
want to
slack?
overreact.
Okay.
I really want to overreact.
The thing is, though, the entire first strike event is only these 2 open qualifiers if you don't fucking make it through.
Yeah.
Like, if you actually just get knocked out in
FaZe
the round
did
of
look
32,
better, though.
They
FaZe
looked
did
the
look
same
better.
as they did in Renegades NSG.
Yeah.
And that's, they didn't look... they didn't look like they were holding anything back in Renegades NSG. They literally just came into this game playing a very similar game. And I think, I don't know, like, I feel like I was fairly impressed by Zachary on the Cypher during this series. But the overall plan, they just weren't able to edge these games across the line. And by the time we get into split, they were boomed.
There's something poetically sad about them watching them lose to Equinox to finish where we saw them begin their story.
Yeah.
The first chapter in the FaZe Invitational, losing to China Win, and now getting knocked out of the first strike qualifier again by China Win, now Equinox. It is sort of symbolic. In a way, I think we might look at this in the future as sort of a symbolic moment for FaZe, where they just sort of end where they began.
Well, they got one more qualifier.
Yeah,
so
it's not over. It's not over yet. Still giving them one more qualifier.
Stop giving Overwatch a bad rep.
I mean, did you see the thing about where they could have gone? Did you see that post on the subreddit?
I didn't.
What was that?
Oh,
so
wow,
it was
okay.
Corey, I think, who answered questions in like the FaZe Discord because they did a Q&A with their Valorant team. And he got the question like, if you weren't playing on FaZe together as a team, like where would your players be? And as I'm trying to find
I
this answer,
found it.
Corey said, Corey says, and I quote, "We'd be all over the place, bro. I'd be in Cloud9. Pretty sure Andre, Baby Bay, would be in Immortals. Zach might have been on Envy. And I mean, Shane, Raucus, probably would still have been in the Overwatch League." Zachary then says, "Yeah, Shane probably still would have been on Houston Outlaws." So, it's pretty interesting to gain that info. I think they were just taking the piss with Raucus. But at the same time, like, just a hypothetical of Corey on Cloud9 with tens, like, that would have been incredible. And also Baby Bay on Immortals as well, bringing that fragging to that team as well.
Yeah.
So
Zachary on Envy. That seems just so out of left field.
Because he was on... Because he has ties to the MB organization.
He was on Dallas Fuel.
He's on Dallas
Okay,
Fuel.
that makes sense. Because I was going to say, they just picked up all CS guys they're familiar with, and then they get Zachary.
That would have been weird.
Strange, but yeah.
Can you imagine Corey on Cloud9?
I mean,
I don't think we need to anymore because,
I mean, Cloud9 are quite good, but
but that would have been crazy.
Would have been a crazy.
Would have been
pickup,
crazy.
but
Anyhow.
Very interesting though, right? Like where the FaZe players could have been.
Yeah, it is quite intriguing. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, and it's time for our most prestigious award of the Valorant Plat Chat podcast.
Here it is.
It is the one, the only Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Wyatt's Weekly Award,
Wyatt's Weekly Award. We changed it because the alliteration of Wyatt's Weekly Award, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
The WWA.
Yeah.
We need a star graph.
Trademark pending.
Yeah, my WWA for this week. I think a lot of worthy recipients. Again, we saw so much gameplay over the week, a lot of impressive moments, a lot of impressive players.
Yep.
I thought to myself, who's deserving of reward? I mean, players from C9 White, I thought Annie was really good. Jazzy was impressive, right? Maybe over there. A team I was really impressed with that we didn't really get to touch on, Complexity, looked like a brand new team. Really impressed with them. The Breach on their team, Jonah P, sick player. Definitely one to watch. Their roster was really impressive. But
is it me?
This week, no.
Okay.
No,
There's
no.
only one player this could
week,
realistically go to.
The Wyatt Weekly Award will go to none other than Cloud9's Relics.
Ooh.
And the reason I'm giving it to Cloud9's Relics is because this, for the first time, I think for the first time, we really saw another player on Cloud9 playing premier Valorant. He was right up there with tens in every single game. Every single game, he was the second fragger to tens. But it wasn't by a lot. Tens was playing out of his goddamn mind, and Relics was right up there with him with star-level performances throughout the whole tournament.
Yep.
Relics looks so much more comfortable just sticking on the Raze right now. He was getting so much damage in. His average, his ADR for the entire tournament was around 160 to 165 average. He was just dumping out damage. And if he's going to be able to play at that star level consistently, and then you also have tens popping off, I mean, that's just a crazy good duo for Cloud9. It was really cool to see him, because you had seen these moments from Relics throughout the Ignition series where he'd randomly deliver some ridiculous ace. And it's like, where is this guy all the time?
Yeah.
And he was, he's switching between the Phoenix and the Omen, and he played a little bit of Raze, and it was like, where does he even fit in on this team? But seeing him on the Raze pretty much the entire time, and the output of damage and limbs he was bringing to his team, it was really cool. It was great to see someone on Cloud9 step up to that level. I mean, he looked like a star player, and if you have a player, again, like that, and with tens, and then these three excellent role players around them, with the Breach from Vice, the Killjoy from Mitch, Shinobi, the in-game leader, looking better than ever. That is a cute cat. He's got a cute cat as well. I mean, Relics, he's got it all. So Relics gets my weekly Wyatt Award, Wyatt's Weekly Award, the WWA. Will award Relics this week. Very impressive gameplay. I really hope, if he can keep this level up, I mean, Cloud9 are going to be just a
Socks and slides.
real top team for many, I don't know how long to come, but I don't know, years, months,
Many weeks to come.
a few days.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows?
But
I think that's a good
they look
award.
damn good, and I'm
Yeah.
Cloud9. I am really excited to watch more Cloud9. They're one of the teams that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
I like this
what they can bring.
trend you've got of essentially it's like a lot of underrated players but worthwhile players. The award is going towards, and like the juxtaposition between Plat Chat Valorant and Plat Chat Overwatch, where my award sometimes just goes to elevators. You know.
Well, listen, we've only given out like 2 awards.
Okay, yeah, early days. It could
So
change.
I still
it could
could
change.
award, I don't know, the door on Ascent.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It could change.
I can't
what
wait to
happens.
see Wyatt start a new Plat Chat Valorant show called Wheeling and Dealing with Wyatt. Finding a young
Wheeling and
talent,
dealing.
bringing it up to date, bring out the potential, and then selling it for a gain.
Wyatt Unleashed. A Wyatt.
Why would he
Wyatt
give away
Unleashed,
that game
yeah,
for
too.
free?
No, he's not
Yeah.
giving the gain away. He's making the money. He's making the Skrilla, the good stuff.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Well,
Wyatt is our most prized member of the Plat Chat now. He's just doing all these different shows. You know, we got all the different brands, the segments. He got everything going. Like Wyatt's Wyatt
Wyatt
stones.
Unleashed coming soon.
Wyatt Unleashed coming soon.
we'll get to work on the contract paperwork and everything else, like for money and shit, pretty soon. But the that's it for Plat Chat Valorant episode 17. I made the mistake of taking an antihistamine at the start of the episode, so I was falling asleep. But other than that, you know, I think we did a good job, guys. We can all, you know, handshakes all around, pats on the back. If we were all in person, if COVID wasn't a thing, you know, maybe I'd be like, let's get a couple of beers after this, you know. But unfortunately, not the case. We can virtually have some beers.
12
if you want.
p.m. Let's get it.
Is that?
What? Now?
No, that's just an open bottle from
That's
the
an
other
empty
night.
from yesterday.
Yeah.
Just trying to imply that I'm horrifically morning drinking.
Yeah.
At noon, yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like the podcast and you made it to this point, leave a comment. What should Wyatt's next segment be called? Wyatt's weekly wonder.
The doctor and the egg.
War.
Doctor in the egg.
The doctor and the egg. Who knows? What do you want his award to be? Also, you know, like the podcast if you actually enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see me leave the show permanently. We'll see you guys soon, and we'll see you next Monday, or even sooner. Actually, I think I got to do first strike previews. So yeah,
Yeah, me too.
I'll see you
First strike
soon.
previews.
Peace. Bye bye.